This is episode 55 of the 99 Forever podcast. I'm Eric Friesen, and my guest tonight is making his fifth appearance on the podcast. He's the digital content coordinator for the Edmonton Elks and a contributor to the hockeywriters.com, Brian Swane. Brian, welcome back to the show.
Eric, it is great to be back. We've done this a few times before, and it's always a blast. So happy to be back. And episode 55 now is 55. Is that Igor Ulanov's number, if I'm remembering correctly?
It was. Well, now I guess it's Dylan Holloway's number.
Right. Well, there you go. Okay. Well, hey, we always pick the good numbers to hit on. Yeah. I think we've done didn't we do number 39, I think, or something like that? And we've done a few good ones.
Right. Yeah. The numbers have always lined up with, you were on for the Mark Messier episode 11, Yari Curry, 17, Grant Fuhr, 31. I guess
that's what it was. Cujo. Yeah.
Cujo. And we talked about Grant Fuhr and Cujo. And I guess also Mark Letestu wore number 55 about 5 years ago for the Oilers.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. But Ulanov did, right? Did I remember?
Ulanov did, yeah. If we go back to the early 2000s, yeah, he was number 55. And I was actually wondering if Holloway was going to go with 44 since 4 is retired by Kevin Lowe, but at least he's keeping that number alive.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That is interesting that's the number he's going with.
Yeah. So just before we get into some hockey talk, how was your summer?
It's been busy. This is my first year, as you mentioned off the top. I'm with the Edmonton Elks now as a digital coordinator. So it's been obviously this right in the heart of our season in the summer. So it's been really busy, but it was an absolute thrill. Everything. It was just a really fun summer. And things kind of this the first summer in I guess 2 or 3 years where things have kind of been more back to normal and just things are opening up, much more opened up around Edmonton again. So it was a great summer.
Well, it's good to hear. And I know that, we're just days away from the start of the regular season, but there's been lots going on in Edmonton. You recently went to Monday Night Raw. How was that?
Oh, yeah, no, that was a lot of fun too. That was our first TV taping here in about 10 years, I think it was, or 9 years. So yeah, I got to see that. And I tell you, there's nothing quite like the live show because whenever they do, there's house shows and then there's, if anyone follows wrestling, there's house shows and then there's TV tapings. And when you go to TV tapings, you always know big things are going to happen. So that's always a cool part of the TV tapings. Like even if you're, the product is kind of not what you're maybe not as into it as normal, you're always going to have a good time going to the TV shows because the crowd is into it. And it was unbelievable too. It was completely sold out. So, Edmonton obviously loves its wrestling.
Yeah, I've only ever been to one live show, and that was in Calgary when I was going to university there back in October of 2010. But I've been to several house shows here in Saskatoon because we only get the untelevised events. And actually, it was 30 years ago this week that Bret the Hitman Hart won the WWF Championship against the Nature Boy Ric Flair right here in Saskatoon. So It's Wednesday will be the 30th anniversary of that, and it's kind of wild that it happened on an untelevised event too.
Yeah, I think. Well, I don't know. Did they? I know I've seen that match, but I don't know. They didn't televise it, but they got it.
They have the video of it.
Yeah,
it was right around the time when Ric Flair was leaving the WWF to go back to WCW. So I think he was dropping the belt so he could exit the company. And obviously it worked out well with Bret Hart dropping the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam that year to the British Bulldog, which then that was the launching point for now you're going to be elevated into main event status and pursuing the world title.
Yeah, that is unbelievable that happened in Saskatoon of all places, and then it's on a house show. That's probably off the top of my head, I cannot remember a world championship title change on a other house show ever. I'm sure it happened way, way back in the day, but in the last 30 years, I don't think it's happened.
And I bought Bret Hart's book about 15 years ago, and just reading through it, he had his first ever pro wrestling match in Saskatoon in 1977. So it was kind of a full circle moment that 15 years after having his first match in Stampede Wrestling, he came back and won his first world title here.
Unbelievable. Really cool that that does come full circle like that. And yeah, it's I got, you know what, I'm gonna have to after go back and find. I'm sure I have it, like I have the Bret Hart DVD collection and stuff like that. I'm sure it's
so
on
do I.
YouTube too.
It is in there. He actually dislocated his thumb in that match too.
Yeah, okay, this is all sounding familiar now too, because I've also read the book, and yeah, that's really cool. It's really cool you got to go to, was that a Monday Night Raw that you saw in Calgary in 2010?
It was. It was right when John Cena was kind of going at it with Wade Barrett and the Nexus storyline around that time. And
okay.
Yeah, it was awesome to get to go to a live event, because I'd only ever seen like you said, the house shows. So to actually be there with all the cameras and the set a little more made up, because you don't get the full pageantry when it's an untelevised show. So that was really cool to get to see.
The unfortunate thing is too, like when you start going to the TV ones, you get spoiled, and then you don't want then the house shows are just never the same again. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping the next time they come through here with TV again, because like I say, like it was completely sold out. So I mean, they've got a market here.
For sure. And I think the only pay-per-view that was ever in Edmonton was in 2004 when Chris Benoit defended the World Heavyweight Championship in a triple threat match against Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And were you at that show? I can't remember if you told me that or not.
Yeah, I definitely was. Yeah, great memory that you can pull that one out. Yeah, no, that's that one is famous because of it was the
WrestleMania rematch.
Yeah, the match is probably most famous for, though, is Foley versus Orton, where Orton is always credited that as sort of like the match where he kind of came into his own and like won the respect of the fans, because it was a hardcore match. And anytime you see like an interview with him, he always cites that, and he always goes out of his way to name Edmonton. So it's pretty cool that he's always kind of referred to that as like the turning point, the defining match of his career.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I mean, just a few months later, he became the youngest world champion in company history. So
yeah, exactly.
I can see why he might point to that. Just another thing, too, there was recently an NBA preseason game in Edmonton. Did you have a chance to go to that and see the Raptors?
No, I didn't. I did have a chance to go to it, but I had some tickets that I passed on to a friend. He could take his little guy who was a big Raptors fan.
Oh, that's nice.
Probably won't get a chance to see him. I mean, I probably will sound spoiled saying this, but I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see a lot of NBA games in my lifetime. So like missing out on the first game of the preseason wasn't breaking my heart necessarily, right. But like for a lot of people that sold out too. That sold out in about 10 minutes here. So I mean, it's a lot of people here that for a lot of people here, and there were so many kids in the audience that day too. Like they were obviously seeing their first NBA game, so it was really cool to see that how much basketball has become really popular in the community here. Because I mean, I went to the Grizzlies' first exhibition game here in 1995 against the Boston.
Oh, wow.
And there was maybe like 10,000 people here at that game. And that's, of course, at the old Northlands Coliseum, or it would have been, I think it would have been Rexall, not even Rexall at the time. Sorry, did I say 2005? It was 95.
Yeah, 95, you said. Was it the Edmonton Coliseum at that time?
Yes, that's right. They just renovated it the year prior, right around the time before they were hosting World Juniors. And so anyway, it would have been Edmonton Coliseum at the time. And yeah, it was maybe like 9,000, 10,000 people there. So to see it 25 years later, I guess, or so, selling out in 10 minutes, it's pretty cool to see how far basketball's come.
Oh yeah, I mean the popularity of basketball has exploded across the country. I think Steve Nash deserves a lot of credit for that, but also the success of the Raptors in recent years, obviously winning a championship in 2019, and everything that Vince Carter even did 20 years earlier. So, yeah, it's awesome to see that, and hopefully it won't be the last time that the Raptors will come back for a preseason game. I think that doing these games across Canada is a great way to grow your fan base even more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have that. Well, I was going to say they are becoming, but they have become the country's team, and I think the perfect parallel is with the Jays, and
Yes.
I mean they won the Jays won their World Series. I think it only took them, I guess, 92, so 15 years. It took the Raptors a bit longer to win the NBA title, but I think you look at sort of that being the point in each franchise. In each franchise history, when they kind of like became the country's team.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the fact that the team that the Raptors beat in 2019 was a dynasty team, that just kind of adds to the importance of it, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I mean, everything about it. The crazy shot against Philadelphia to win it that Kawhi Leonard hit. I mean,
yeah.
it's got that championship run has it's got all it has everything that goes into like the storybook one that you look back on 40 and 50 years, and it's got all the moments.
For sure. And we're seeing how many Canadians are in the NBA now. I mean, you are one of the best, if not the best, at tweeting out Canadian NBA stats. I can't think of anyone who does it close to you. So in the next 20 years, you might even have more Canadians to be keeping tabs on.
Yeah, well, it's getting to the point now where like I'm not even sure now. I've lost track. That's how it's gone from like where there was like 2 or 3 guys to cheer for to where it's like now it's like upwards closer to 30, and some guys get cut, some guys get signed, and I'm not even sure night to night exactly how many Canadians are in the NBA anymore. But that's saying a lot, right? Like to get to the point where it's just where it's commonplace. It's not even really that special anymore. Which I mean, I guess is what you're always hoping for. But yeah, it's kind of funny to say that when to go back to the days when it would be like, oh wow, there's 2 of our guys here in the league, like this is amazing, and now it's just like, oh, we don't have anybody playing tonight. That's weird.
And you might start to see players coming from all over the country too. Even if maybe there will be an Alphonso Davies type player to eventually make his way to the association.
Yeah, well, we're still waiting on our first Albertan to make it. You guys have actually had somebody from Saskatoon make it. So, but we haven't got. We've had somebody from Manitoba make it. We've had BC. We've had Maritimers make it. Quebec and Ontario, of course. But we're still the lone holdout here. So we got to get our act together. We need to get somebody to the NBA real soon.
I'm sure it's coming. All right. As I just said, we're 3 days away from the start of the 2022-23 Oilers season. It's an exciting time in Edmonton. Like we said, there's a bunch of events going on, but really this is what drives the city. This is what drives the fan bases, is when the Oilers get back rolling. Brian, after recording 104 points last season and reaching the Western Conference Final for the first time since 2006, is this the most confident you have been about the Oilers' chances to win a Stanley Cup in the past 30 years?
Ooh, most confident I've been. That's a good way to phrase it. Yeah, I would probably say so. I think so. I might have. Yeah, no, I would definitely say so. Like, I don't even think. I definitely feel more confident about it this season than I did heading into last season. And last season would probably have been as close to confident, at least, that they would have some kind of a playoff run in the last whatever years. So yeah, I would have to say that this is the most. I don't want to phrase it as the most confident that they could win the cup, but the most confident I am in having a deep playoff run.
That's a good way to put it too. I mean, the Oilers are inside their window to win a Stanley Cup in 2023. Certainly in my 20 plus years of following the Oilers, this is the most optimistic I've ever been about their chances to bring home the cup. Even after their Cinderella run to the final in 2006, or when they made it to Game 7 of the second round in 2017, I still wasn't as confident going into the next season as I am right now. I mean, Edmonton has McDavid and Draisaitl in their absolute primes. these are the two best offensive players in the world. And even though they have set the bar extremely high over the past few years, I think they're both going to take their respective games to even new heights this season. The Oilers have also brought back virtually the same team that made it to the Final Four last year, but this year they will have key additions like Evander Kane and Brett Kulak in the lineup on opening night instead of joining the team midway through the season, as well as a full year of Jay Woodcroft behind the bench. And I also think they've upgraded the goaltending position with Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner between the pipes. And you could argue that that's almost as important as anything. So looking at this roster on paper, I think it's easily the deepest team the Oilers have had since they won their last Stanley Cup in 1990.
Yeah, no, definitely on paper. I mean, I think the only one that I would probably, just speaking on paper, I would say the 90-91 team really stacks up there too, because I mean there was still Fear, there was still Ranford,
Messier's last year,
Curry, Tikkanen, Steve Smith, Charlie Huddy, Kevin Lowe. There was, that was still it. They, a lot of them were, they had a lot of them were dealing with injuries, a lot of them were getting on in age, but I mean on paper that was still a pretty stacked team. But yeah. Since then, definitely just pure talent alone, this has got to be it for sure.
And you know what? Not to take anything away from that 91 team, because they were the defending champions and they did still make it to the conference final, and they made it again in 92. But I think that where Messier and Anderson were at that stage of their career, playing in their 12th and 13th season respectively, or I guess it would be 12th and 11th season, compared to where McDavid and Draisaitl are in their mid-20s, I feel like the top-end talent is higher right now than it was then. And that's not to take anything away from Mark Messier. He was still an incredible player at that point, but I just think the combination of McDavid and Draisaitl might have been slightly more than with Anderson. And also, if you look at the talent across the board, it's like you said, there were a lot of players from championship teams still on that roster, but with the addition, like we said, of Kane, Hyman now taking a pretty good step forward and having a career year last year. Nugent Hopkins is still in the mix. If he's healthy, I think he helps. I would say that the talent is pretty close.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the 90-91 team, I think where they really, you saw what they were was when they ran into the North Stars of all teams, and got taken out pretty unceremoniously in 5 games. I think that team got by more on its experience and its guile. But yeah, they were some of them were getting older. A lot of them were banged up. Messier was really banged up that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the end that just kind of, they just kind of wore down, and that's not something that will happen to this team. This is a team that's pretty much everyone is in their prime. Everyone looks like they'll be healthy, and you hope nothing happens to anybody during the season, although bumps and bruises always do happen. But theoretically, everybody goes into the playoffs in pretty decent shape. Then that's what separates them from the 90-91 team. Whereas what separated the 90-91 team from this team is just that championship experience.
Yeah. And I think if we were talking about, say, the 1985 Oilers or the 1987 Oilers, I would easily put those groups ahead of this year's team. But by the time 1991 had rolled around, they still had lost players like Gretzky and Coffey, and Curry was gone by then too. So you were starting to see some of the key pieces leave town, whereas they're still the top end pieces are all still under contract and at the top of their abilities right now. So let's hope that this is going to be the year that Edmonton's 30-plus year drought comes to an end.
Yeah, it could be, and you're right. I mean, these McDavid and Draisaitl are right in their prime, and this is this is probably as good a year as good an opportunity as any as they'll have. But they should have a good opportunity for a few years in a row here. But I mean, this is where it's really starting now, where the opportunity to cash in and win the first and of what I know Oilers fans, hopefully many, at least at least multiple, I'll say.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. Winning, you know what? Even winning, like, even if they win, let's say win 2 in this day and age, that's pretty incredible. So,
I mean, even if they bring 1 championship back to Edmonton, they'll be legends in this city forever. For ending Canada's 30-year Stanley Cup drought, for bringing the cup back, the first post-dynasty championship. I mean, McDavid and Draisaitl basically already walk on water in that town, but this will just elevate them to even a new level that they haven't seen yet.
Yep, no, for sure. It will be. I think people will be more than happy with just 1, but I know that there people think they can, and I mean there's reason to think they can win 2. We saw Tampa Bay did it, but we look at how difficult it was for Tampa Bay to get through 2, and how many 7th games they had to survive just to do that, and then how difficult it was to come back and try and do it a 3rd time. So well, I think winning 1, I hope people, if they do that, people will understand, appreciate, and I think they will appreciate how amazing of an accomplishment that will be, and if they can somehow do it more than once, like I say, in this day and age, that's like almost the equivalent of winning. Actually, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to compare it to winning 5 in 7 years. But I mean, we know how difficult it is. How many teams have won, like Pittsburgh with Crosby there? What do they have? 3? Is it?
Yeah, they have 3, but 3. You have to remember, Crosby didn't get his 2nd ring until 2016, which was his 11th season. So in his first 10 years in the league, he only won 1 cup.
Yeah, like the gap between his 1st and 2nd is 7 years, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I believe they won. They won back to back, which is pretty special. But I mean, that just shows like how difficult it is that a team that good with him and Malkin, it took them 7 years to get back to that 2nd time. So,
and maybe if they had been healthier, because Crosby and Malkin have both had lots of injury troubles in their careers. If they would have both been healthier, they might have won 1 or 2 more in the early 2010s. It's hard to say. Obviously, the Chicago Blackhawks were a very dominant team at that time too, but would they have got by the Hawks or the LA Kings one of those years? It seems likely that a healthy Crosby would have got them there. And we can only hope that McDavid and Draisaitl can enjoy even somewhat of the success that Crosby and Malkin have had in their incredible careers.
Yeah, if they can hit 3, that would be remarkable.
Oh, wow. And to get there, there's going to have to be young, inexpensive, and talented pieces around them. And one of the most promising pieces of the Oilers' future is top prospect Dylan Holloway, who we mentioned off the top of the show, number 55. And following an impressive showing at the Young Stars Classic last month and throughout the preseason, Holloway likely isn't going to be considered a prospect much longer. Woodcroft hasn't officially said that Holloway's made the team, but he's clearly earned the opportunity to start the season in the NHL. Brian, did you think that Holloway was going to make the team out of camp, and where would you slot him into the lineup on opening night?
First off, I got to go full disclosure. I've hardly paid much attention to the preseason with how busy I've been lately, so I can't give too much insight.
Fair enough.
I don't even know. I'm not even sure who he's been playing with. So I don't know. I couldn't say where I'd slot him. But as far as your question goes as to whether I thought he would make it, I was maybe 50-50, and that's nothing against him. That's just more to the fact that, I mean, there was already, the roster was already looking pretty good as it was. And Ken Holland's history is showing that he likes to overripe guys than to get them in there too early. So I wasn't 100% sure. But also the fact that he got a shot in the playoffs last year showed what they thought of him, and obviously thought that, he could already be ready for this level. So it was... Yeah, I was kind of 50-50 on whether he would make it. I'm pretty sure that, by the sounds of everything, he's made it now. And I guess we'll see whether, the interesting question will be will he be here to stay?
That's true. I mean, he's already burned the first year of his entry-level deal playing in Bakersfield last year. It's not one of those situations where they have to send him back after 9 games, which we've seen with some top picks in the past. But I don't think he's 100% locked in to be in Edmonton all year, but I would say that at the very least, if he was going to be going down to Bakersfield, he already would have been sent down, especially with some of the roster moves that they've made, like trading Dmitry Samorukov for Klim Kostin today. Putting several players on waivers. It looks like they're going to start the season with just 21 men on the roster, and that's just a result of cap crunch, and they have to only have one black ace up in the press box. But sticking with Holloway, looking back to the bubble playoffs in Edmonton in the summer of 2020, the silver lining for the Oilers being eliminated in the qualifying round was that they improved their draft position by 9 spots and selected Holloway with their first pick. And almost exactly 2 years later to the day, he's not only cracked the roster, but he's pushing for a spot in the top 6. I mean, he's a big, skilled, two-way forward who can skate like the wind and also bring some physicality and grit. I really like his offensive instincts and his high hand-eye coordination. And if anyone was worried about his ability to shoot the puck following multiple surgeries on his left hand, he put those concerns to rest by scoring a natural hat trick against the Vancouver Canucks last week. Now, personally, I would start him on the third line and just let him find his footing in the league before moving him up to one of the top 2 lines and having him go up against the opposition's top defenders every night. However, it looks like Holloway's going to be playing left wing on the second line with Draisaitl and Hyman on Wednesday night, and it's hard to argue with that decision because he's outplayed a number of wingers on the team. You asked earlier, where he's been playing. He spent most of the preseason on the third line, but in the final 3 games before the regular season starts, he played 2 games on Draisaitl's wing and 1 on McDavid's wing. So I think that, as the NHL lineups get closer to being what they're going to go with to start the season, it says a lot that Jay Woodcroft trusted him to be in those situations and be playing with the 2 best players on the team. So I think that's a bit of a sign that he is going to get to play with Draisaitl, and it looks like he'll start there when they take on the Canucks in 3 nights.
Well, I didn't know he'd played a game with McDavid either. That does.
It was the Abbotsford game.
I know it's just preseason, but that does say a lot for, like you said, what Woodcroft thinks of him. Who was he playing with on the game when he had the natural hat trick?
That was on Draisaitl's wing.
Oh, okay.
Now, the game when they went to Abbotsford, which was a terrible broadcast. Tons of Oilers fans were saying on Twitter how poor the broadcast quality was. It was almost unwatchable. And but Draisaitl had that night off. He didn't make the trip to BC, so that was his only opportunity to play with McDavid. But he played with Draisaitl the game when he had the hat trick against the Canucks, and then he played with him again against the Kraken on Friday night. So there seems to be some chemistry building there, and depending on what Yamamoto's health is, because if he's not ready to go on Wednesday, it seems like Puljujarvi will move up and play with McDavid and Kane on the top line. But that second line looks to be at least locked in for the first game with Draisaitl, Hyman, and Holloway. And I wouldn't have expected that if you had asked me a month ago that he would be starting on a skilled line. I thought just give him a soft minutes third line, try and get him as many offensive zone starts, and kind of just let him ease his way into the league and not have to be thrust into playing a prime position right away. But the way that he's played and just outplaying the likes of Puljujarvi and Fogle and Shore and some of these other guys that he was competing with for a depth spot on the team, it's hard to say that he hasn't earned the chance to be there.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like he has earned it, as opposed to he's not being put there because they have to put him there.
Right.
He's made them put him there, which is, I mean, that's the ideal situation. I mean, if it doesn't work out, you have other guys that you can go to right away. So that's a testament there to the depth of the organization now.
Yeah, and the fact is that he also played some center growing up, although I think he's going to play mostly on the wing in the NHL. But because the Oilers have Ryan McLeod and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on the third line, if they decide to move Nuge up to the second line again, because he's shown that he has chemistry with Draisaitl in the past, then you can move Holloway down to the third line. And I think that's actually a pretty solid looking third line with Holloway, McLeod, and Puljujarvi. You know, all three guys have fairly good size. They're all good skaters. They're all have different levels of puck skills. Like this is that would be a pretty good third line. And I mean, how long has it been since we've went into a season where we said, you know, the Oilers have a really strong top nine? It's usually been, you know, the top two lines were pretty good, but there was a quite a significant drop off in talent after that.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and that's probably going back to something you were mentioning earlier. Like that's one of the reasons why you can say that this team is the best poised to, however you want to phrase it, win a cup or make a deep run in the last 30 years.
Oh, definitely. And Brian, even though 8 preseason games is too many, in my opinion, one of the best parts of watching these games over the past few weeks has been seeing the return of the Oilers' classic royal blue and orange jersey. After wearing the navy blue and brighter orange jersey for the past 5 seasons, how happy are you to see this iconic hockey jersey back on the ice?
Yeah, no, it's always cool to see these, and I'm a bigger fan of these than I am the ones they were wearing the last few years. So, you probably know if I had my way, I'd have the late '90s jerseys out there. Those are always my favorites. But yeah, no, these are nice. I haven't like I say, I haven't really seen any preseason games. I've seen a couple of highlights, and they do look good out there. But yeah, it's I think what I can say is that I know it's excited. Like anyone who's talked about the jerseys all loves them. So I think like they definitely listened to the fans on this one, and I think that this is the look that people wanted. Hey, and there may be some symbolism to it, right? I mean, like if this is the year that they're ready to break out and do something special again, then you know it's the perfect timing to go back to the look that they had when they did so many special things.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And you know, I think that the Oilers' royal blue jersey is a top 3 jersey in the league. That jersey is linked to the most successful period in Oilers history and one of the greatest dynasties in hockey history, for that matter. I wish it never went away in 2017. And I hope these will be the Oilers' permanent home and away jerseys going forward. Because when you look at some of the original 6 teams like the Montreal Canadiens or the Detroit Red Wings or the Chicago Blackhawks, they have made very few changes to their uniforms in a century of existence. And I think the Oilers should do the same. That's how you build a tradition. And they have this beautiful, legendary jersey that Wayne Gretzky and the boys on the bus made famous in the 1980s. And that's the jersey that Connor McDavid should be wearing when he eventually lifts the Stanley Cup as captain of the Oilers. And I believe it was Bob Stauffer was saying on his show that the Oilers players were reportedly asking the organization for them to bring the royal blue jerseys back this year. So I'm glad they made the right decision to go back to these threads. And if they want to experiment with other third jerseys going forward, that's fine, but this should be the look that defines the Oilers.
Yeah, I like the idea of just keeping a consistent I think it speaks to the tradition of a franchise if you can do that, and just keeping a consistent home and away. And I mean, as you say, if you want to experiment with other jerseys, there are so many opportunities to do that now. Like number one, every team can have an alternate jersey, but then I mean, there's so many other programs they introduce every year, whether it's like the reverse retros or you know, I mean, if you play like in a Stadium Series game or a Heritage Classic, you get to have a special jersey for that. Right. Like there's always so many different. There's never a shortage of opportunities to introduce like special one-off jerseys. So like, you know, if you're looking to get like something to make, you know, just to get a new look out there to excite the fans, to make some money, those chances will always exist. But yeah, I mean, it's I think we've talked about this before, but like, can you imagine if the Habs ever like even tinkered with their jersey?
I know. You couldn't. Yeah. That's what I said. That's what the Oilers should be striving for, where they're just a classic look that exists for eternity, and that you never have to worry about it changing. And it's such a nice uniform too. It doesn't make sense to ever move away from it, even though I do have a fondness for the jersey from the late 90s through to the mid 2000s. I mean, not just because of the 2006 Cup run, but that was the jersey of my childhood. So I have several of those jerseys in my closet. I'm a big fan of it, but I still think that the royal blue and orange is their best look.
Yeah, well, as I say, I mean, I have to admit that those 90s jerseys are my favorite as well. But the thing I appreciate about the 90s jerseys, and I think too, when they were introduced in 96, 97,
yeah,
it was an important thing because the team, and I won't go into the whole history of it, but I mean, that was the year when the team almost moved. And, they had their season ticket drive and they were able to save the team, keep it in Edmonton. They just acquired Curtis Joseph. The team was finally on an upswing. And they'd gone through a year where they were doing, there were games where there was less than 10,000 people in the arena. And they just needed to do something to really create a new energy, a new excitement.
There's a fresh start, a new chapter, right?
And to grab the interest of newer fans too. And part of that was updating the look. And I think that's what they did. But what I liked when they made that shift to the jersey is it was more, they only really just, I don't know if modernized is the right word, but they still kept the classic logo. All they did was, and basically the jersey striping patterns are even very similar. Yep. All they did was just kind of colorize it so that there was a color that was more hip for 1996, as opposed to what at the time was a very 80s looking color. So I think that's what they did. So I completely understand why they did that. As someone who had just become a teenager myself at that point in time, I can tell you it worked on me and a lot of my friends and peers. So, I mean, it was something they needed to do at the time to recreate the energy. But I think now, I think that the tradition is so deeply rooted and set now that you wouldn't ever have to do that again.
Yeah. And TSN's Tom Gazzola broke the news that the Oilers were also bringing back an updated version of the Todd McFarlane designed streaking oil drop jersey as part of the reverse retro program this season. Brian, images of the jersey were leaked online last month. First, what did you think of the original design when it was introduced back in 2001? And what are your thoughts on the reverse retro as well?
Well, I'm a huge fan of the original one. That might be, I know I just said it was those late 90s are my favorite jersey. I guess if those are my favorite home and away, this would be my favorite alternate jersey there's ever been. I just loved it. A lot of that's probably nostalgic as well. I mean, if I was the age I am now when that jersey was introduced, I'm not sure if I'd respond to it the same way.
Right.
But I absolutely, that is one of my all-time favorites. I was one of the many people that kept on saying, we got to bring this back. We got to bring this back. So I'm a little skeptical on what it is right now. We've seen a few leaks. Tommy has posted the photo, which shows part of it, but I don't want to judge it based on that photo because I think it has to be seen in its entirety to be appreciated, and I think it needs to be seen in action on the ice to really be appreciated. So I'm not going to judge it just yet. If I had my way, I would just have preferred would have just brought this thing back just exactly as it was. The problem with reintroducing it through the reverse retro program is that they have to have some kind of twist to it, right? To make it the reverse retro. So it wasn't going to ever be the same. Doing it that way. So we know that they've introduced some orange into it. We'll see what it actually looks like. There's been I think you've shared it on Twitter. Somebody's done a mock-up, which is pretty, from what I understand, is pretty close to being accurate. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I've been waiting for them to do the public unveil. I thought it was going to happen a few weeks ago when they introduced their home and aways, but
apparently it's happening in November because they didn't want it to collide with when they're bringing back you don't want it to overshadow the reintroduction of the classic royal blue and orange jerseys too.
No, exactly. And I mean, this is a whole other different thing you can generate attention around. So it would make sense to have it on its own day. I remember when they introduced the McFarland jerseys was already nearly, I want to say it was like almost 4 weeks into the season. It was late October, and then that was when the season was starting.
Yeah.
That was the 01-02 season. So because they had the Olympic break that year, they started really early. Like they probably played their first game, maybe not the end of September, but like right around October 1st or 2nd. So it had already gone a few weeks before they introduced it. So it's sounding like that timeline might line up pretty much about the same for this year.
Yeah, and it's smart to bring it out in November, 1 month before Christmas. You can only imagine how many kids are going to be asking for it. This is just smart marketing by the Oilers. Yep. So I totally understand why they're doing that. And, I'm on the same page as you. I've always been a big fan of this jersey. I have 2 of them in my collection. I know some hockey fans don't like this look at all, but it was the top selling third jersey in the NHL in 2001, 2002. And I don't know, I just think it's a really cool, unique design, and it's unlike anything the Oilers had ever done before. It was the first time they had moved away from the iconic crest that has been on every other one of their jerseys throughout their 50-year history. And there's also a meaning behind the logo. There's the 3 skate blades representing 3 decades as a franchise at the time, and the 5 rivets representing the 5 Stanley Cups the Oilers have won. And Gazzola said that the jersey would have hints of orange, as we've seen. And, I wasn't sure how it was going to look either. But after seeing the leaked picture of it, I really like it. Just having the jersey back at all, I'm a huge fan of that. And even if it's a little different, I'm still excited to see the Oilers wear this jersey again for the first time since 2007.
Yeah, and to go back to we were mentioning there when they first introduced it, and it was like the number one selling third jersey in the NHL at that time. It was such a bold move for this team because they didn't break from tradition very much. Like as I mentioned, when they changed their jerseys, they still kept the same logo. They just to kind of modernize the colors for them to. Like I would say, and there were some pretty wild jerseys back in the day, but this one was as radical as departure as really any team had tried at that point in time, and so that was really risky with a market that is as traditionalist as this one is. And at least the fans in my demographic at that time loved it.
Really liked it.
It lasted for a number of years too. I remember, like you mentioned, a lot of the symbolism, like the 5 rivets, and I think some of the other details was like, wasn't there was like a gear representing each captain or something like that?
Okay.
That might be I have to go back. Yeah, like every little minute detail of that like represented something. And I remember when that first came out, my first question was like, well, what are they going to do when they win the 6th Stanley Cup? It's like how are you going to change the logo? So that's where my thinking was at the time. But and they may have that might be a problem they have to yet deal with in the future. We'll see.
That's a good problem to have. And, the Oilers are only going to wear this jersey for 1 season. And they'll also probably only wear it a handful of times. So I'll definitely be getting one this winter because it'll be a lot harder to find one after that. And let's not forget, the Oilers are also going to have 4 jerseys this year because their alternate jersey from last season is still going to be worn again this year.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, so there you go. So they've already got 4 jerseys in play this year, and then I mean, when they have their next outdoor game, they'll get an opportunity to introduce another one for that too. So there's always lots of opportunities to come up with different logos. I am interested to see what they do for their next outdoor game. Because there's been some really interesting designs from teams in recent outdoor games from what I've seen. So, and the Oilers have shown recently that they're not afraid to try some different things and some unique ideas. So it could be pretty cool.
Yeah, and Elliot Friedman did mention on his podcast last season that there's a good chance that Edmonton will get to host an outdoor game in the fall of 2023, about a year from now, which would line up with the 20th anniversary of the original Heritage Classic. And I think that would be an appropriate time for it to come back to Edmonton and back to Commonwealth Stadium to go back to where this all started and where these outdoor games kind of had their birth 2 decades earlier.
Yeah, well, they can come the Commonwealth Stadium. That's my stomping grounds now.
Yeah.
They can come. They can come invade our turf. Yeah.
I will be there if it happens. So hopefully we'll get to meet up then.
And I actually just was able to call up the details on that jersey, because I did something on it last year. So it's the 5 rivets around the oil dropper, the 5 Stanley Cups, there's 10 gear teeth, on which 5 on the large outer gear and then 5 on the inner gear, and that represents the previous team captains in the Oilers' history.
See, that was the one detail that I didn't remember from it, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so I mean, that must have been 10 at that point in time. That must have included their WHA years.
Yeah.
That had to have, because they couldn't have been, I'm just thinking off the top of my head now. Well, maybe not. Because I did go through, let's see, so...
I mean, there was like Chipperfield, Blair McDonald, Lee Fogelin, Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier. That's 5 right up until 91.
Then we had Lowe.
Unless you had 5 more captains in the 90s.
I think there was, because there would be Lowe, McTavish, Corson, Buckberger. Wait. Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah. So and also the Oilers have, especially at that time, were still making their NHL history the primary focus of their history. I don't think there had been as much acknowledgement for the WHA years, and over the past decade or so, we've started to see that era get recognized a little bit more. But I think they could still even do a better job of that.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not it probably never has been recognized to the degree that it is. I don't think, like, unless you were alive at that time, I don't, even probably the most diehard fans don't have a lot of awareness of it, or they would have to have gone out of their way to kind of read up on it and research on their own. There's surprisingly little little out there too, like even just like footage of games.
There isn't very much in the way of video at all. No, and I've had Bruce McCurdy from the Cult of Hockey on my podcast 3 times. Actually, he was my most recent guest before this episode, and he's always said that the Oilers need to do a better job of honoring that period of their history and talking more about the WHA. And he was a season ticket holder going back to 1977, and was an Oilers fan right from the start in 72. So I always like hearing stories from Bruce. And I mean, if you look at any Oilers apparel that you can buy, it always says established 1979 on it. It never says 1972. Mm-hmm. So they really are focusing that 1979 when they entered the league as the beginning of the Oilers' history.
Yeah, and they haven't. I know we'll probably get into this in a little bit here, but I mean, like with the new Hall of Fame they have, here's an opportunity to start recognizing some of that era.
Well, I think that's a perfect time to transition to that right now. So the Oilers did make another major announcement last month when they established their own Hall of Fame. All 7 Hockey Hall of Fame players that from the Oilers that have had their jersey retired by the team, as well as Glenn Sather and Rod Phillips, were automatically inducted into the Oilers Hall of Fame as part of the 2022 class. The organization later announced that Lee Fogelin and Ryan Smith would be the additional 2 inductees this year. And honored members of the Oilers Hall of Fame will have their names permanently displayed on the ring above the PCL loge level at Rogers Place. The inaugural ceremony will take place at Rogers Place on November 3rd before their game against the New Jersey Devils, and I'll be in attendance for that game. And we'll talk about Fogelin and Smith in a bit, but first, I want to go back to an episode that you and I recorded in July of 2020, where we listed our respective top 5 candidates to be included in an Oilers Ring of Excellence. And here we are a little over 2 years later, and it has finally happened. I should also mention that neither one of us had Ryan Smith on our lists because we both believe that he deserved to have his number retired by the Oilers. But your list was Doug Waite, Bill Ranford, Charlie Huddy, Kelly Buchberger, and Craig McTavish. And mine was Waite, Dave Semenko, Esa Tikkanen, Ranford, and Huddy. So we each had three of the same guys. Brian, thinking back on these lists more than 2 years later, is there anyone that you would change, or are these still the first 5 players that you would induct into the Oilers Hall of Fame?
Yeah, probably not. I'm kind of surprised with a couple names I have. I'm surprised that I had Bucky and McTavish that high. Not to take anything away from them, but if I was doing this over again, I think Tikkanen would probably get in there for the top 5. Wade, Ranford, and Huddy for sure. I think like anytime those ones are always consistently will come up with me as the ones I'm most sure of. Yeah, that's this is such a tough conversation. But if I had to go my top 5 right now, does that include? Yeah, so we're not including Smith now.
No, well, he's already inducted. Well, he will be inducted. He's been named to it, but yeah.
So Smith and Folkland are off the table. I would go Waite, Ranford, Tikkanen, Huddy, and this is just players, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We are naming just players, but according to the Oilers, any individuals from the organization can be inducted. Anyone from coaches, team staff. So, like you assume that Joey Moss will eventually get in.
Yeah. So I mean,
he's a Hall of Famer in every way.
Yeah, he has to get in. I think John Muckler is someone that at some point in time needs to get in there. I wouldn't include him in the top 5, but he definitely should be honored. Boy, I don't know. Like, see, if once Huddy goes in there, now you almost got to put Randy Gregg in because he's the only one that wouldn't be in. Like, I think somehow you've got to get all, because of all the guys that have won, we're probably around for the 5 Stanley Cups. You've got the first. There's 7 of them, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got the first 5 in as having their numbers retired.
Huddy would be one of them. Randy Gregg would be one of them. Those guys will, they should eventually have their nights.
They should almost go in as like a package deal in the same year, I think.
I wonder if, and I'm curious if the Oilers are going to continue with this 2 people a year that will go in.
I think I read somewhere that the maximum is 2, but it won't even necessarily be that many. Like they have to get the threat. I think it's the committee has to
a 75% approval.
75%, which is actually a pretty high threshold, especially when you consider that there are so many strong candidates. Like we could probably make a list, rattle off like 15 guys that you could have a very strong case for.
Well, I know you're a big fan of Curtis Joseph, but does his 2.5 years in Edmonton, as spectacular as those 2 playoff runs were in 97, 98, is that enough of a body of work to get in?
No, I don't think it is.
What about Bill Guerin? Bill Guerin played parts of 4 seasons here. I mean, these are players who had a strong run with the Oilers for a short period of time. But is there some sort of minimum length of time with the team? Do you have to play at least 5 years with the organization, at least 7 years? I'm wondering what these standards will be. Like, I mean, when you think of players like McDavid and Draisaitl, those guys are going to have their numbers retired by the team because they're headed straight to the Hall of Fame. But will a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins one day be inducted into the Oilers Hall of Fame? Will Darnell Nurse? These are the types of players currently on the team that I think will get in. I think about someone like would Taylor Hall or Jordan Eberle have their night. Those guys might be a little less likely, but there's going to be a lot of players to pick from over the next, however many years.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could throw out any number of names, and you could make and each of them brings up an interesting case as to why they should or shouldn't get in. I'll just take just an example of each category. For example, let's look at like somebody like McTavish and Buchberger, who never were higher than a third liner on the team, never put up great offensive numbers, but both served as captain. both went on to have McTavish, especially, but Buchberger was a coach here as well. Both went on to coach for the team, so they've impacted the organization on different levels. McTavish even actually in the front office as well.
Mm-hmm.
So McTavish is not a good example because I actually think McTavish should get in just because he's of
just
how long he was involved.
Player resume,
and he went back and then he took the team to the Stanley Cup as a coach, so he should get in. So he's not a good example. But let's look at Bucky. Like one of the he I think he's one of he was here for like 13 or 14 seasons. He's like one of the
87 and 99.
Yeah, he's one of the top 3 or 4 guys in terms of longevity with the team.
Right.
He was a captain. He was a heart and soul guy. He won, I want to say, 3 cups.
87, 88, 90.
Yeah, so he's got that going for him too. So I mean, but he was never more than a third or fourth liner, and he was never a guy that put up great offensive numbers. So does that detract from him getting in? Or does everything else counteract?
I don't think so, because we're not saying were they a Hall of Fame worthy player, but in the Oilers' history, I think that you could look at someone like Buchberger and say he fits the criteria of a Hall of Famer because, like you said, the leadership role he played, the longevity, just to tell the story of the Edmonton Oilers, you can't fully tell it without these guys.
So yes, and I agree with that. So let's take another name that I think will be a perfect example as to a guy that's kind of like borderline. Jason Smith, who served as captain for several years, was another heart and soul guy. He also he ranks way up there on the team in terms of games played too. But he was never around for he was not a guy who was like an all-star player, and he does not have any rings.
He was also, Smith was also tied with Gretzky as the longest serving captain in Oilers history until McDavid broke that record last year. It's almost wild to think that Connor McDavid is already the longest serving captain in Oilers history.
Yeah, that does blow my mind, actually. That is crazy that there's been no one. He's probably going to serve in that role for a few more years, more at least. Then I don't know if anyone will ever surpass that after
I don't think so. Yeah. They would, because he got the C at age 19, it would be very tough for someone to exceed that total. It's sort of like Steve Yzerman in Detroit, where he got the captaincy at 21 and held on to it for the next 2 decades.
Yeah, I mean, two very rare things have to happen. Number one is that you have to be awarded the captaincy at such a young age, but then you have to have a long tenure with the team.
Exactly.
And both instances are rare. Obviously, it's much more rare to get the captaincy at 19, but even having like a 9 or 10 year run with the team isn't as common anymore these days. So for both of those to happen is pretty rare. So he's probably gonna that might never be touched. He'll probably end up serving 10 or more years, and that probably won't be touched. But yeah, like someone like Jason Smith, and two other cases I'll throw out there as an example would be someone like trying to think of Randy Gregg's not a great example because we've already decided he's getting in for the 5 Stanley Cups. Maybe someone like a Dave Lumley, who was a pretty decent player, was like a third liner, but played a significant role on Stanley Cup winning teams. But he's more, the biggest thing he has going in his case is being part of the dynasty era. Does he get in over a Jason Smith, or take like a Sean Horkoff?
Sean Horkoff is an interesting one, and I was thinking about him. Ales Hemsky is a lot more of a slam dunk to get into me. But when you think about Horkoff, he spent parts of 12 seasons with the Oilers. He was also a captain. He was on that team that went to the final in 2006 and scored a big overtime goal. When you look at where he ranked, he was top 10 in a few Oilers statistical categories when he was traded to Dallas in 2013. I would say that there's probably more of a case for someone like Horkoff getting in than a Dave Lumley.
Yeah, and for me, Horkoff and Hemsky are pretty even. The only thing that really separates one from the other for me is Horkoff having been captain. For me, that actually elevates him and gives him a stronger candidacy to get in.
However, Hemsky was the top player on the team for about a period of 5 years. And Horkoff did have that one really strong career year in 2005, 2006 when he had 73 points. But offensively, Ales Hemsky was, another level ahead of him.
So I get would how much weight, how much value do you put in a player being captain? Well, I think we can agree that Shane Corson isn't going to get it. But then every other guy who's worn the C has, if they're not already in, has a very good resume to get in. Yeah. So where do you come out on because there's so many different factors that play into this.
That's
it's
true.
Such a difficult thing. There's longevity. There's how much of a were you one of the scoring leaders on the team? How many Stanley Cups do you have? Did you make any All-Star games? And as we were talking about, were you a team captain? Were you a heart and soul guy? What do we take into account? What the team, what this individual meant to the community.
There's all these things. I think that there's going to be there might be a bit of a waiting period for some of these guys though, because when you think about how many players are going to be in the running for this, and let's just say that only 2 get in a year. So when a name like Hemsky comes up or a name like Horkoff comes up, they're going to have to say, okay, who's all his competition to get in this year? Who are the names that he's up against? And maybe some of the younger guys gets pushed a little bit further down the line. They say, let's honor the older players first. Obviously, you want to get a guy like Dave Semenko in there, and sadly he's passed on, so he wouldn't be able to attend the ceremony, but his family will obviously be there and, induct him. But it's just, it makes sense while those guys are still around to try and get as many from the 80s or even the 70s. If we go back to talking about the WHA, if there are players from that era that you want to include, that would be the time to maybe honor them first.
Yeah, no, that's a really valid point. I mean, speaking with us with the Elks, we recently did our Wall of Honor inductees, and it was 3 guys from the from the Elks dynasty teams of the late 70s, early 80s, and they're all gentlemen now who are in their 70s, and there's more recent players that certainly are deserving Hall of Fame candidates, and they'll have Wall of Honor candidates, and they'll get in there eventually. But we did want to recognize these guys. Well, they can have the opportunity to enjoy the experience and
of course,
and to be part of it. And so, I mean, I think that's a valid point about going back and recognizing these guys from the 70s or the 80s. I just pulled it up here too. So actually, it's a maximum of 3 nominees. This is for the Oilers Hall of Fame. A maximum of 3 nominees will be elected annually, each requiring an affirmative vote of at least 75%. The interesting thing is when you look at who the selection committee is comprised of, and you wonder if there is not that I'm saying anybody's playing favorites here, although they might be. I don't know. But
there's former teammates of some of these guys, Wayne Gretzky's in there.
There's going to be some. There's probably going to be some unintentional bias probably creeps in, so you can maybe see the influence of the selection committee. I know it says that I think each they have 3-year terms and can serve for a maximum of 15 years on the selection committee. So you'll be getting some new voices in there every 3 years or so.
I like that they have a diverse group, though. I mean, I think Shannon Zabados is one of them. Jason Greger is in there. There's people from different walks of life, and not everyone has either worked for the Oilers or was had a connection to the team. Some of them were just media members or fans. Like Shannon Zabados was an Edmonton native and grew up watching the team, and she's probably going to have her own informed opinion on who should get in as well. And she was even a goalie in practice for the Oilers a couple times. And I think that there's. Oh, I wish I could remember everyone who was on the list. I don't have it off the top.
I've got it right here.
Okay.
So it's Gretzky, Ron Lowe, Louis DeBrusk, Chris Joseph, Bruce McGregor. Then so that's so you have so obviously Gretzky, Lowe, DeBrusk. Well, Lowe was a coach as well, but
Right.
and Joseph, those are all former players. Bruce McGregor is a former executive. Then you have the media members: Jim Matheson, Terry Jones, Bob Stauffer, Jason Greger. And then who they have under the community members category is Chief Wilton Littlechild, and Shannon Zabados. So that's the group right now. So definitely a diverse backgrounds. Probably besides Shannon, who's I want to say she's around like 35. Maybe even getting close to the 40 now, but she's still on the younger end.
Yeah.
Jason Greger's around like mid to late 40s. Stauffer's mid to late 40s. But then Jim Matheson, Terry Jones are up in their 70s. And all the players are at least... Louis DeBrusk is probably about 50. Gretzky's...
I think Stauffer's
60.
actually mid-50s.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
So he's up there too. Ron Lowe's got to be getting close to like 70 now too if he's not there already. Chris Joseph
he was a goalie for the Oilers 40 years ago, so he's got. I wouldn't even be surprised if he's over 70.
Bruce McGregor is probably in the 70s. Gretzky, of course, in his 60s, and Chris Joseph is probably getting up there as well. So I mean, it's leaning to an older demographic right now. So that we probably see maybe older guys get selected. And to be honest, and I had a friend who brought this up to me is he was saying that's probably part of the reason why Fogelin got in. Not to say that he doesn't deserve it, because Fogelin definitely deserves to be in.
Gretzky might have had a say in that.
Exactly. And he vouched for him. And you know what? Fogelin deserves it. I don't think those of us. I think some of us, unless we grew up in that era, I don't think we can appreciate what he meant to that team. Like Fogelin was the captain when those guys were coming of age. And then but then he knew when to step aside and let Gretzky lead. So he was not only the guy that was sort of like the guy they looked to in their formative years, he was the guy who was selfless enough to know when it was time to pass the torch. And I think, like, I don't know if there's been, I don't think we can fully appreciate, I think we have to be there. I think you have to be.
We do.
You have to be in that room to understand how significant of a role he had in shaping that team that then eventually went on to win 5 Stanley Cups in 7 years. And that group spawned several captains itself. Gretzky, Messier, Lowe, right? So, I think so. I mean, Fogelin is just, I think that's my theory on why Fogelin is in there, and that's, full credit to him. He deserves it 100%.
Right. And I think that you summed it up very well right there. He might not be one of the first names that comes to mind when you think of the Oilers dynasty, but Fogelin played an important leadership role on those teams in the early to mid 80s. And while he didn't produce many points, Fogelin was a rugged defensive defenseman on the most exciting and offensively dominant team in NHL history. And when you have a team with so many gifted superstars, the Oilers still needed to have players that were focused on taking care of their own end of the ice, like Fogelin. And he was an effective shot blocker. He could kill penalties. He dropped the gloves when necessary. And just such an important player in the early years of that franchise. He was the captain when the Oilers reached their first Stanley Cup final in 1983 before passing the torch to Wayne Gretzky the following season. He played in the Oilers' first 7 years in the league and won 2 Stanley Cups in 1984 and 1985. He was also, he played in the 1986 NHL All-Star Game, I believe one of 9 Oilers that were named to the Campbell Conference All-Stars that year. So Fogelin's induction into the Oilers Hall of Fame is certainly deserving.
Yeah, he is deserving. Like if you'd asked me a month ago or before this, before they'd announced it anyway, like he probably would have, honestly, I probably would have had him somewhere like as the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, maybe even a little bit lower guy that I would get in. But it's something that can't be quantified because he only won 2 Stanley Cups, right? Like say he didn't put up eye-popping numbers or anything. He doesn't even rank that high in terms of like games played with the team. Like he was around for a while,
7
but he
years.
wasn't. But
You know,
not
when you look
not like.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say like there's so many guys that if we're just basing it on longevity, then what about Ethan Moreau? What about Todd Marchand? I mean, there's so many guys like this. It's like, but honestly too, like what about Ethan Moreau? What about Todd Marchand? It's such a tough.
You mentioned the captain thing. If you're looking at longevity and you're looking at captaincy, I mean, those are factors that Fogland has in his favor as well. Yeah. So that probably played a factor. And, Gretzky knows what he meant to those teams when they were in the hunt for their first couple championships. I mean, he made it to 3 straight finals with the team in 83, 84, 85, winning 2 of them. And, recognizing that it was time to pass the C off to Gretzky at age 22, that he, as the face of the franchise, he needed to also be the captain. And it was the right decision at that time. I just think, he'll also be the first American that's going to go into the Oilers Hall of Fame. So that'll something that he'll have on his resume. And just, I think it's a good decision to bring him in because we weren't fans at that time. So it's hard for us to appreciate what he meant to those teams. But everything that I've heard and read about him, it sounds like he was someone who played an important role and was almost like a mentor to a guy like Kevin Lowe because they played such a similar style in the same position.
Yeah, and I feel like he was the captain at the most pivotal and important time to be a captain on the team. Like this was when all those guys were just so young and they were ready to be something great, but they I shouldn't say that. Well, they were about to become something great, but they maybe weren't quite ready for it yet. They needed somebody like him to fill that role. And by the time, by the time like he passed it off, there were probably multiple guys on the team that could fill that role, like Gretzky did. But Messier easily could have worn the C at that point in time, right? So, but at the point in time that he served as a leader, it was such a unique dynamic. That so many young guys, someone had to be that guy, and he was the one. And obviously, he taught them very well.
Yeah, and by the time he moved on in '87, the Oilers, were multiple-time champions by that point, and were pushing for a third. He obviously was dealt at the deadline that year, so he didn't get to be a part of that team in '87 that won the Redemption Cup after the heartbreaking loss in '86, but there was a foundation had been laid, and he definitely played a part in that. All right, let's talk about Ryan Smith now. Smith symbolized what it means to be an Oiler with his unmatched combination of work ethic, grit, scoring touch, and passion for the game. Brian, other than the legends who already have their banner hanging from the rafters at Rogers Place, is there perhaps no more deserving member of the Oilers Hall of Fame than Ryan Smith?
No, definitely not. He would have been my number one. I think, as you said there when we were talking about this in 2020, we both agreed that he should have his jersey retired. So yeah, he would have been my number one pick. I think as difficult as it is to kind of narrow this field down from all these names we've been talking about, and there's others that we haven't even brought up yet that should probably be in the conversation too. Like he was the one that was just like, there was no question about it, and there was no question about when. It's like, yes, he should get in, and yes, he should get in immediately. Period. And I think anyone you talk to about this will agree that like he was the one universal slam dunk. So yeah, he checks. I mean, yeah, he didn't win any Stanley Cups, but I mean, he checks every other box that you could possibly want.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Smith was invaluable to the Oilers. No one has ever worn the Oilers jersey with as much passion as Smith. He grew up a fan of the Oilers during the 1980s, and he lived out his childhood dream by donning the orange and blue for 15 seasons. Smith recorded one 70-point season, 4 60-point seasons, 8 50-point seasons, 4 30-goal seasons, and 8 20-goal seasons with the Oilers. He ranks 5th in goals, tied for 9th in assists, 7th in points, and 2nd in games played in Oilers history. And while there weren't many highlight reel goals among the 386 he scored in the NHL, Smith was one of the best in the league at screening the opposition's goalie, deflecting shots, and battling for any rebounds or loose pucks in the crease. He also had great strength along the boards and was an underrated passer. Smith helped the Oilers reach the 2006 Stanley Cup final, and he played in the 2007 NHL All-Star Game. And a trademark of his was to gather a few pucks after the pregame skate and throw them over to the glass to kids in the crowd. These were just some of the things that endeared him to the fans in the city. And off the ice, he worked with numerous charities in Edmonton and made countless visits to the Stollery Children's Hospital. So even though his numbers are not on the same level as the Oilers legends from their glory years, Smith is one of the most popular players to ever play for the Oilers.
Yeah, well, I think I always kind of describe him as like he was the defining Oiler for a generation of fans. I would say anyone,
myself included, for sure.
Yeah, I would put I count myself just coming a little bit before that generation. But I would say like yourself and anyone, probably 10 years younger in that age or that range, like he was the defining Oiler. He was who the Oilers were for you as you were growing up.
Yeah.
And that's, there's maybe like 2 or 3 guys that can say that. There's like Gretzky was the defining Oiler for maybe one group, then it was maybe Waite, and then it was Smith, and now it's obviously be McDavid, but like there's not many guys that can say that.
No, and I mean, okay, I became a full-time Edmonton Oilers fan in 1999. I followed the team on a day-to-day basis since then. So I was 10 years old at that time. And Smith retired in 2014, 15 years later. So I was a fan of Ryan Smith through elementary school, high school, university, and into my broadcasting career. And I later had the chance to meet Ryan Smith in 2018 when I was working for New Cap TV in Lloydminster, and I had to interview him, which was still the best day of my broadcasting career and one of the best days of my life, actually, to get to meet my childhood hero and interview him for a story on TV. And he was as nice as you would expect him to be. He's just never lost that small town humbleness that he had as a kid. And you wouldn't even, if you didn't know he was a former NHL All-Star who played 19 years in the league, you wouldn't suspect it from talking to him. He just seems like such a normal guy, far from, a superstar who played in the league and won an Olympic gold medal and just all these things. I was just so thrilled to get to meet him, and he took the time to talk to me even before we did the story. You got the sense that he's just a really good person, and I was just, came away from that interaction as an even bigger fan than I was before.
Yeah, well, I've certainly never heard anybody say an ill word about him. So I mean, it's I think that you could probably find there's probably someone. He probably touches somebody every day like that has an experience like that.
Yeah.
Just meeting and interacting with him. So I mean, he was he was. It's always cool when the good players are good people too, because it's not always that way.
For sure. And so just a absolute gem of a person. And I think that if you talk to any Oilers fans who have come in contact with him over the years, they would pretty much give the same review that I just did. He's just, a salt of the earth kind of guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's I dealt with him a couple times when through my media career as well too, and he's even when he's dealing with media, mm-hmm. which not everybody likes. He was a good dude. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite Ryan Smith memory?
Do I have a favorite Ryan Smith memory? That's a good question. I mean, like, it's funny because I have the lasting memory I have of him is just getting destroyed in front of the net, like, which is not like a specific memory. It's probably like any number of 5 or 6 plays on any given game that he ever played for the Oilers. But I mean, honestly, like the defining memory I have of him, it's not necessarily a positive one, but it's the image of him in the airport in 2007 when he was traded, and just how emotional he was. Like that's the one that'll stick with me. I excuse me. I wish I could tell you like there was like a specific play or like a famous goal that I can recall, but like the first thing that it will always be that. I also will do. I was with the Edmonton Sun at the time, so that's the reason why it sticks out for me as well. Like. Working at the time, I remember his final game and how like he got like one of the greatest farewell post game receptions you'll ever see anywhere. I think like I don't know exactly how long that went on for, but it probably gets longer in my mind as each year passes. But like by the time I'm 80 years old, I'm going to be telling people that was like, God, he was out there for 2 hours after the game, and everyone's cheering him on. But like it went on a long time. Like people were not ready to say goodbye.
No.
So there's that, and yeah, but like I'll always remember, 2007. But that, the reason I remember that is just how emotional he was, and the reason he was so emotional is because of how much it meant for him, or how much it affected him to have to leave here. So that kind of in a roundabout way just is a testament to who he was.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough one in 2007. I still remember my dad picking me up from high school and telling me on the car ride home that Smith had been traded to the Islanders, and it was just a devastating blow. I'd seen so many of my favorite players traded away over the previous decade. I mean, going back to Bill Guerin, and then eventually Doug Weight, Anson Carter. Just it seemed year after year the Oilers, had to trade these guys because they couldn't afford to keep them, and it seemed like Ryan Smith was going to finally be the one who was going to go end to end with the Oilers, and just unfortunately a contract dispute ended the chances of that happening, but thankfully he returned 4 years later and played out the final 3 seasons of his career back in Edmonton. And yeah, that 2014 farewell, that was a similar send-off to the one Wayne Gretzky got at Madison Square Garden in 1999. And ironically, that's his hero, that they had a very similar farewell to the fans. And if I had to pick one moment, I mean, maybe the game when he took a Chris Pronger clearing attempt to the face and had some teeth knocked out and missed only, I think, 2 shifts and came back and later scored the game-winning goal. I believe that was Game 3 at Rexall Place in the 2006 Stanley Cup Final. So just that one stands out. Scoring a hat-trick in October 2006 in a span of 2 minutes and 1 second, breaking Wayne Gretzky's record for the fastest hat-trick in Oilers history. That's another one. I think he also scored a hat-trick on my 13th or 14th birthday in the early 2000s. So there's a lot of them, but just, this guy was my hero, and I can't wait to be there on November 3rd to see him receive this honor and be inducted into the Oilers Hall of Fame.
I actually got another one too, and it's not really a moment, but one of the things, it's not a moment per se, but I always remember about him is how the crazy comeback he made from injury to get on the 2002 Olympics.
Yes.
Yeah, like he was supposed to be out until like March, I think it was. And I remember that
he missed 21 games.
Yeah.
And he finally came back in time. Yeah, because Gretzky had already named him to the team, but it didn't look like he was going to make it. And to be honest, like that celebration, winning gold for Team Canada, ending a 50-year drought at the Olympics, it would have been special no matter what. But having a couple Oilers players on the team like Smith and Eric Brewer, that just added to it.
Yeah, the Eric Brewer, that's one of my all-time favorite trivia questions. Is like stumping people. It's who was the other Oiler on the 2002 Team Canada, and like no one ever gets it. But that's like, I love Eric Brewer, man. I think he's very underappreciated at the time as an Oiler. I think he was underappreciated. Now, in looking back in history, I think he was underappreciated too. And I think it's so cool that he got to be there. And some people may say, well, maybe, you know what, maybe he was the only reason he got on the team is because of Lowe had Oilers influence. And you know what? Maybe that was the case, but he was very good in those Olympics, and he played a big part in that team's success. So however
scored
he
a goal
there,
against Sweden in the first game of the tournament too.
Yeah. So like, I mean, how for whatever method it was that he managed to get himself on that roster, he was a very important piece of that team.
Right. And sorry, you were also saying about Smith coming back from injury and time to play at the Olympics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just to like, well, I think he came back like shortly after Christmas. Like there was like a month run up before even the Olympics, and he was back with the Oilers, and there was like, it was like a remarkable comeback that you know, he's that's one of the biggest.
Was it a high ankle sprain?
Yeah, it was something like that. Well, it was whatever it was. It was more serious than that, I think, because he got surgery. Like I remember he had surgery that night. I can't remember exactly the specifications of the injury now. I really should be able to remember this. I can't. But I know he had surgery that night.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, whatever it was, the doctor told him it would be like, well, it'd be like 6 to 10 weeks. And he was like, he was going to be back in 5 weeks, whatever it was, right? If it was 4 to 6 weeks, he was going to be back in 3, or I don't know. But yeah, lo and behold, he was not only back in time for the Olympics, like he was back well before the
ahead
Olympics.
Of time. He had some time to get warmed up and ready to go.
Yeah. And I mean, the Oilers needed him at that time. The Oilers got off to a really fantastic start that season and never really found their stride again.
Unfortunately, they just barely missed the playoffs in 2002.
Yeah, they had a really good March and April to make it close at the end, but they just couldn't get in. And they certainly. Smith missing whatever that was. I think he was gone for about 4 weeks or so. It really hurt them.
Yeah, it was tough. But I mean, at least he was able to come back and be a part of the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that's another one there that just tells you everything you need to know about that guy.
Yeah. All right. Since entering the league in 2015-16, Connor McDavid has continued to prove on his greatness every year down the line. And despite setting the bar unreasonably high last year, especially in the playoffs, I expect him to exceed expectations again this season. So, Brian, tonight I have 7 McDavid over-under type questions for you. There are both single season and career questions. And after you say whether you think McDavid will reach the milestone or not, I'm going to put you on the spot and actually predict an exact number that he'll finish with. Sound good?
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so let's go into the first one here. Wayne Gretzky won the Art Ross Trophy as scoring champion a record 10 times during his NHL career. Gordie Howe and Mario Lemieux are tied for the second most with 6. McDavid has claimed 4 Art Ross trophies by age 25. Will he win 7 Art Ross trophies in his career and overpass Gordie Howe and Mario Lemieux for second?
Yes. So
how many?
I guess.
Oh, and how many do you think he will end up finishing with?
8.
So he would have to double the amount that he already has now. And I mean, I think he's a safe bet to win at least the next 2, which would get him to 6 and tied with those guys. And that's at age 27. So, you're saying another 2 more after that.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it as I'll say he wins 4 of the next 6.
Okay, so you think that he'll still
be 7? Like I think his window to do this is within like the next. Yeah, I'll say 4 of the next 6.
So you still see him winning a couple into his early 30s then?
I guess so, right? Because I mean, within 6 years he'll be turning 31 that season.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I mean, that would just, if we're looking at players from different eras and trying to say how dominant they were against their peers, McDavid has dominated his peers very similar to the way that some of the all-time greats have. Maybe not Gretzky, but when you look at just where he is compared to the rest of the league, he's so much more talented than the next best player.
I might need to rethink this now. What is it? Is it like really uncommon for guys after the age of 30 to win the scoring title? I'm sure that's happened.
It has. I think most recently, Martin St. Louis won it in 2013 at age, I want to say 37. Gretzky won his last one in 1994 at age 33, but it is uncommon after the age of 30 to win a scoring title because usually by then a younger superstar has come along that's kind of exceeded them. But I don't know if I see anyone in the next handful of years taking that title. I mean, even with Connor Bedard coming around, who might be the next generational talent, I still don't know if when Bedard is 21 that he'll be able to produce more offense than McDavid will be able to at 29.
No, yeah, that's kind of how I look at it too. But maybe, you know what? Maybe I'm going to go 7. I'm going to play it safe.
Okay.
But I'm still going to say he beats Howe and
Lemieux.
Lemieux. Thank you. Yeah.
He'll
so
surpass them. Yeah. I think that 3 more is a good bet. I'm actually going to go with 8. I'll go with your original prediction.
Okay, fair enough.
I think he will win 8. And I mean, what if he just is 32, 33 and there still isn't a real challenger to take the Art Ross trophy away from him in a healthy season?
His biggest challenger might yet still be his teammate.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wonder if, as we get into his, 32, 33-year-old seasons, if he's still the top offensive player in the league. And that's going to be something that'll be fun to watch by then. But even if someone does pass him, I still feel like he's going to be right there at the top of the scoring lead. I mean, just other than his rookie season, he's never finished lower than second in the scoring race.
I hadn't realized that, actually. That's quite remarkable.
Yeah, in the past...
That's really remarkable.
He won back-to-back scoring titles, finished second 2 years in a row, and has now won back-to-back scoring titles again.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is pretty remarkable. So
it's unbelievable.
Yes, I mean a guy like him, right? I mean, he's one of those guys you can't really rule out anything.
No, and there's more talent around him now than he's had before. So I mean, the chances of him reaching a 7, it seems even more likely.
But plus it's just like, as an old guy, I like to think that 30 is not the
it's not when
I know not when you start to go downhill.
For mere mortals, that's when your skills often start to deteriorate a little bit. But Connor McDavid is not a mere mortal on the ice. He is a supernatural being, unlike maybe one we've seen in the last 25 years.
Yeah. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, Father Time catches up with everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So that'll play a big part. It'll be interesting to see how his longevity is. Because you even saw it with Gretzky too, right? Whereas incredible as he was in his 20s, like his body started to break down a little bit too, and so
it did.
That plays a big part of it.
And but like I said, he still won 3 more scoring titles after he left Edmonton with the Kings, and he was able to still prove that he was the best player in the league up to that time. I mean, even in his second last season at age 37, he led the league in assists. So he was, he never really lost that ability to pass the puck. He was consistently the best passer in the league almost throughout his entire career. But when he was with the Oilers, he was almost an equally dominant goal scorer and playmaker. And by the time the 90s rolled around, he was almost exclusively a passer.
Yeah, I mean, so much of Gretzky's passing ability was just like his vision.
Yeah.
And that's something that, like, even, when your body starts to break down, you still have that. You still have that mentality. You see things that no one else on the rink can see.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he was still able to be so effective in that role so late into his career.
For sure. Okay, so I've got you're sticking with 7 Art Ross trophies.
Yes, I'll go
Okay,
7.
and I'll take 8. Okay. McDavid led the NHL in scoring with a career best 123 points last season. It was also his 5th 100-point season in the NHL. He would have 6 by now, but unfortunately in 2019-20, the pandemic-shortened season ended his season prematurely when he had 97 points in only 64 games. However, he's continued to be a dominant force every single year. And now that he's in the prime of his career, will McDavid become the first player since Mario Lemieux in 1995-96 to put up 150 points in a single season?
This coming season or any season?
We'll just say in any season.
I'm going to say no.
Okay, you don't think he'll get quite to 150. Where do you think he tops out at? Have we seen his peak offensive season, or is it still to come?
No, I don't think so. Like, I think he can get close. Boy, I'm going to say, I'll say 139.
That would be still an incredible season. I mean, if you think about it, Nikita Kucherov holds the salary cap era single season scoring record with 128 points. And I have a feeling that McDavid will break that this season and become the first player in the 21st century to put up 130 points in a single season. And if he gets closer to 140, it wouldn't shock me either, especially if the Oilers' power play is as dominant as I expect it to be.
Oh, he'll definitely top 128 at some point in time. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll say his career high. I'll put me down for 139 for his career high.
Okay, 139. I do think he's going to get to 150. I've said this for over a year now, so I've got to stick with that. And I still believe it. I think that he will hit 152 at some point.
152. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, he was on pace for 153 points in the second pandemic year in 2020-21 when he was playing exclusively against the Canadian division. But this past season, we saw his points per game average come a little bit down, but still he had the highest point total of his career because it had returned to a full 82 game schedule.
Right. Well, I mean, to maintain, he was putting up points at such an insane pace in 2021. Like, I don't know if that season had gone on to 82 games. I don't know if he could have sustained continuing to score at that rate. I mean, it was otherworldly. Like, it's just like I said, and as I said a couple minutes ago, I don't put anything past this guy because he can achieve it. But I mean, I would think it would have been absolutely incredible if he had somehow been able to maintain that scoring pace for what was that season, 56
games, and they played a lot of baseball type series where they would go into one building for 2 or 3 games.
Reduced travel, I think, made it easier too, right? Because
perhaps it did.
So I still
don't buy that it was an easier division because every division had weak teams. If you look around all 4 of those, it's not like the Oilers were the only team that had some weak opponents to beat up on, like the Canucks or the Senators. There were other teams that were around the league that had some weaker opponents that they were able to pad their stats against too.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think I don't look at that as being a weak division at all. In that season, that's there's a few things I would say that I think playing the baseball schedule with reduced, which everybody did, so everybody benefited from having
no fans either. That's a fact.
Yeah, so there's that everything about that was just so bizarre. It's impossible to try and quantify it against anything else, really.
Agreed. Okay, McDavid is a natural playmaker, but he's also shown tremendous growth as a goal scorer as well. He scored a career best 44 goals last season, and hitting the 50 goal mark is one of the only things that's eluded McDavid from an offensive standpoint. But do you think McDavid will eventually have a 60 goal season in the NHL?
A 60 goal season, eh? Yeah. Yes.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
I'm just thinking now because I'm thinking like, could he score 60 goals? He could score 60 goals, but I'm thinking, okay, but if he's scoring 60 goals, he's probably getting more than 139 points. so
unless he just really focuses on goal scoring that year, maybe I actually would like to see McDavid be a little more selfish at times. He's always looking to set up his teammates, and he is a pass first player. But I've always believed that if he put his mind to scoring 60 goals and he really wanted to do it, he would.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so too. And so, yeah, it probably doesn't make much sense for me to say it, but yeah, I'll go with 60. He can hit 60 for sure.
Yeah. I'll just bump it to 61 because that's how many records Wayne Gretzky set in his NHL career. It seems like a good number, so we'll go 61 goals.
Why stop at 60, right?
Exactly. And, scoring goals matters to McDavid because it helps his team win games. And only 8 players in NHL history have ever reached the 700 goal mark. McDavid already has 239 goals in 7 seasons in the league. Will McDavid score 700 goals in his career?
My first reaction is he won't, but I'm just going to do some quick math in my head here first to make sure.
So he's about
what's he at right now? 239, you said?
He's 239, so he's a little over 450 goals away. Maybe 461?
461.
If my math is right.
Yeah, you're right. No, I'm going to say he won't hit 700.
He would need to score another. Yeah. Okay.
Boy, even if he hits 500, that'd be pretty. But he's already. I'll say.
But I think he's a safe bet to get to 500. He'd only need to basically double his total already. So let's just say he even scores at the same pace over the next 7 years that he has over the previous 7. We're looking at him hitting 500 goals somewhere around age 32.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'll just go bang on 550.
550.
Yeah. That's probably a little on the lower end of things, but yeah, I'll go 550.
This is one of the first ones where I'm not sure that he'll get there. I didn't want to say just 600 goals because I thought upping it to 700 makes it a little tougher of a question. I'm not 100% sure he'll get to 700 because I think that playmaking will always be the strength of his game, but I do believe he'll score over 600 goals in his career, and it wouldn't surprise me if he gets over 650. But and he could push for 700, but I'll say he scores at least 650 in the league.
For comparison's sake, who is the most recent guys to hit 600?
Well, Ovechkin several years ago.
And then, is there anybody else recently? I'm just trying to think if there's like a comparable.
I think Patrick Marleau hit 500 about 5 years ago, but he played forever too. I mean, he was never really an elite goal scorer. He just kind of chipped away at it over the course of a career. But I mean, not taking anything away from him, he was still a consistent goal scorer for a long time.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you hit 500 goals, I mean that's. I'm not sure off the top of my head how many guys have done it, but like I can think of a lot of great goal scorers that didn't hit 500.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. The next one, Gretzky recorded an NHL record 2,857 points in his career. No one will ever approach that total again. However, Jaromir Jagr came close to becoming the second player to ever reach the 2,000-point plateau, finishing with 1,921 points. Brian, McDavid is an offensive force who can produce seemingly at will, and his incredible skating ability and skill and vision should allow him to play into his late 30s or early 40s if he wants to. Will McDavid become only the second player in NHL history to record 2,000 career points?
To record 2,000 career points. Oh, man.
He's at about 700 right now. Under. Okay, you have to take under.
I'm going to go under. I don't like that. And I don't even know what I would pick.
700 points at age 25, just to put it in perspective.
Yeah. So,
and let's just say he plays till he's 40. So let's say he plays another 15 seasons.
Okay, that's fair. So if he plays another 15 seasons, and obviously he's mostly healthy.
And his point totals likely will drop off a little bit after 35, but
so he plays another 15 seasons. So I'm going to do some math here.
okay.
And what's he at right now?
He's 3 points shy of 700.
Oh boy, he could get close.
I think he's going to get close.
Okay, I'll say this: I don't think he's going to play till he's 40. But if he does play till he's 40, I think he can do. I think he can definitely hit 1900 anyway.
Because wouldn't you say he's a safe bet to get about 120 points for the next 5 years, 120 or more?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So yeah, I would agree with that.
So 120 times 5 is 600 points. So now we're talking about 1,300 points by age 30. And then how many more points does he get after 30? And when I look at it, I'm thinking if he plays till 40, there might be 700 points in those 10 years.
Yeah, that would be to average 70 points a year. So, I mean, say he still gets around 90 for
a couple of years.
2 or 3 years of his 30s, then that, you know, that leaves you like 400 to get over maybe 6 seasons. An average of 67.
I'm saying he does it.
Still pretty good.
I think if he plays until he's 40 years old and he's healthy, that's a big thing. If he's healthy and he plays till he's 40, I say he will hit 2,000 career points.
Yeah, those are two big ifs. But if he does play till he's 40 and he's healthy, I mean, yeah, he could get pretty close. I'm not sure he's going to play till he's 40 just because that'll have been he came right into the NHL at 18.
Yeah.
So I mean that'll have been such a long grind for him by that point. I'm not sure if he'll last long, but if he does, then he will be within sniffing distance. And I don't know how much the records mean to him, but if he's like, I mean, if he's 40 years old and he's at like 1900 or he's got 1,920 some, like, does he come back for 1 or 2 more years
to try and get to 2,000?
Yeah, it's like I don't know how much of a baseball fan you are, but like Albert Pujols is retiring this year.
Yeah,
he's 8. I think he's I think he was 11. Then he hit one more. I think he's 10 home runs away from Babe Ruth. I was like, I can't, and he's still near the top of his game. Like I cannot imagine. He's 42, but I can't imagine how you cannot want to come back for 1 more year to overtake Babe Ruth. Like that is to me.
He did overtake Babe Ruth for second on the all-time RBI list.
Yes, he did. So,
and I'm glad he got his 700th homer. That was, and he did it. Like the Angels are one of the teams that I'm a fan of, and as well as the Blue Jays. So I liked having him in Anaheim for several years, but it was probably appropriate that he came back to St. Louis and got that big home run as a member of the Cardinals.
Oh yeah, it's one of the. I mean, if this is it, and it seems like it is, it's be one of the all-time great endings. I mean, he's playing so well to go out near the top of your game, and there's something to be said for that, right? These guys don't want to. Yep. A lot of guys maybe they call it the Seinfeld thing, right? Where you stay one season too long, but yeah, I mean it's and that's what it'll come to too, right? Like is McDavid is such a. I don't know if perfectionist might not be the right. Well, I don't know. Would that be fair to call him a perfectionist?
He's
maybe
just
not the right way to characterize him.
He has an unrelenting internal drive. Like he's just so wired to compete and to win.
He doesn't settle for anything at all less than his best. So like he strikes me as one of those guys that like when his game starts to go a little bit. Is he going to want to keep coming back?
Possibly, but I think that because he's the greatest skater in hockey history, and that's as someone in his early to mid 20s. But even when he's, let's say, 35, I still expect him to be an elite skater. Maybe there will be a handful of guys who are close to the same or better than him by then. But I believe that his skating is so high end that even when he's in his late 30s or 40 years old, he'll be an above average skater in the NHL. So he'll be able to play just because the game has transitioned to such a such a skating game where it's aside from hockey sense, the most important skill to have. And I think that will allow him to play for as long as he wants to.
Well, I'll go with I'll go with your thing that if he plays until he's 40, put me down for 1900.
1900. Can you imagine, though, the moment if he did score his 2000th point? That would have to be a top 10 individual accomplishment in NHL history. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I might put it as number 2 in NHL history. I honestly can't even fathom it. I can't, and then I'll say this for like the 6th time already. I hate doing that because you shouldn't put anything past this guy, but like it's almost inconceivable for me at this point, and that's but we'll see.
And this wasn't one of
when you're at like season number 18 of 99 Forever, we can revisit this.
Yeah, that's what it'll take us to get there, and I didn't have this question written down, but just because it's on my mind. If he gets to 7 or 8 Art Ross trophies, second most ever, and if he passes Jaromir Jagr for second most points all time, I still think that Mario Lemieux is the second best player ever. I know some people will say Bobby Orr, some people will say Gordie Howe, others will even think Lemieux is the best ever. But for me, I think Gretzky, the most intelligent player ever, best passer ever, greatest player ever. Mario Lemieux, the most skilled player ever. Do we start to have to talk about McDavid in that class as possibly the second best player ever if he does have the second most Art Ross trophies and second most points in NHL history?
Oh yeah, I mean honestly, I don't even think I would be I don't know. I whenever this conversation comes up, excuse me, I always quantify it as being in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Because I can't speak to the guys from the other eras. It's so difficult to compare, but I would agree. I'm with you. Like in my lifetime, Lemieux was number 2, and I don't even think McDavid necessarily has to do all that to overtake him for number 2. I think he needs to win a cup.
Yeah.
And maybe 2, but
but there's different between best and greatest too, and that's the other thing. Just in the past 6 months, the 2 major sports networks, national sports networks in this country, Sportsnet and TSN, have both, elevated him to new heights that I haven't seen a player talked about in my lifetime as a hockey fan. On Tim McAuliffe's show, Tim and Friends, he asked the question, is Connor McDavid the best athlete in the world right now? And on TSN, I believe it was Steve Dryden who wrote an article asking, is McDavid the best player ever? When was the last time that we have seen a player get this kind of attention where they're being talked about as possibly the best athlete alive or the best hockey player ever? I mean, I don't think it has happened since the days of Gretzky and Lemieux.
For best hockey player, no one's ever been mentioned in the same breath as Gretzky at all. So yeah, this is rare that you hear that, but I mean that's how good this guy is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on to the final 2 ones now. McDavid signed an 8-year contract extension in the summer of 2017, keeping him in Edmonton for the first 11 years of his NHL career. Brian, will McDavid play 12 or more seasons with the Oilers?
Ooh. 12 or more.
Essentially meaning,
yes.
Will he play beyond his current contract? He will.
Yeah, yes, he will.
I believe he will too.
Do I have to pick a number? I guess.
Well, I mean, if he plays to 40, that's 22 seasons, and that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm not totally convinced he's going to play his entire career here, but I do think he'll play more than 12 years here, especially if he's playing until 4. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it is possible, but I will say, I'm going to put him as playing. I'll say 13 seasons in Edmonton.
At least 13 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, I really hope there's an 8-year contract extension coming after the 11 years that he's already going to play here, which would take him to 19 seasons. And Frank Saravelli recently said on Daily Faceoff that unless the wheels completely fall off in Edmonton, he doesn't see Connor McDavid ever leaving. And I've always been confident that McDavid was going to be a career Oiler anyway, but just sort of hearing some of the, most plugged in insiders saying that this is where McDavid wants to be, this is where he's desires to play his career, that does kind of give me at least a little more sigh of relief that, he is going to be around for years to come and competing for Stanley Cups beyond age 29 when his contract expires.
It's totally possible. I think too. I mean, he's 25. Who knows what he's going to want to do when he's 35 or when he's. I mean, right. It's so hard to say. So, but I mean, I'll put him down. I'll just say 13, and with a certainly possibility that he could be a career Oiler. But that's so hard to say. Like just the teammates change, where you are in your life changes. I mean, the thing I think it's going to have to, for him to be here that time, the whole lot of them is going to have to be here. Like I think, I think Draisaitl, Nurse, and all those guys, they either stick around together, or if one or two of them go, they all go.
Yeah, and the way I look at it, okay, so Darnell Nurse signed an 8-year extension last year. It kicks in starting this season. And Darnell Nurse and Leon Draisaitl are, from all signs, Connor McDavid's best friends, from everything we know about him. And I think the fact that Darnell Nurse is going to be here for the next 8 years also increases the likelihood that Connor McDavid will. And as we've heard from Elliot Friedman and some of the top sources around the league, the salary cap is going to have a significant spike in the next several years, especially in the summer of 2015, when it could jump to as high as $92 million, which lines up perfectly with when Draisaitl needs a new contract. And I think that if Draisaitl ends up signing an 8-year extension in 2025 as well, that will also signal that the following summer in 2026, McDavid will be signing an 8-year contract.
Yeah, I think you keep them. I think they're both either here for their careers, or if one's gone, I think the other's gone.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So I mean, there's so many things. I mean, obviously how much success the Oilers do or don't have will play a large part in that too. I mean, if and hopefully they win a cup or two, but
yeah,
if they don't at the end of this, I mean, is he gonna get frustrated and understandably and want to chase a championship elsewhere? So many things can happen.
And the way I look at it too is that even if McDavid did win a cup somewhere else, I feel like, because we talked about he is such a driven player, that he would always feel like he didn't get the job done here. He's a legacy player. He wants to win a Stanley Cup with the team he started. I think that is really important to him. So
I could see him coming back.
Okay.
Like I could see him going and coming back, actually. So yeah, like to finish out his career, and like you say, like to if the job isn't done here, I could see him like wanting to close out his career here. So yeah,
I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I think there's any number of scenarios that could play out. Okay. That's why I went 13, because I'm thinking like, well, even if he leaves after this contract, I would not be surprised if he's back for like a couple of years at some point along the line. So we'll see.
Well, I'm hoping for the sake that doesn't happen, that he does end up playing start to finish as an Oiler. But I am happy to hear that you think that he is at least going to play beyond the 11 years he signed for, and hopefully it will be a lot more than that. And the last question I have for you, this is the most important one, and we were just talking about it. Will McDavid win 2 Stanley Cups with the Oilers?
Oh boy. You know what? I might. Sure, why not?
I've got him down for 2 as well. I've long predicted that he would win 2 Stanley Cups here, and I don't want to change it. Obviously, even if he won 1 cup, it would immortalize him, and he'd probably have a statue right next to Wayne Gretzky's on 104th Avenue. But I just believe with the team they're putting together right now, and where he's at in his career in Draisaitl, and that this team is just primed to go on another deep run, I think that 2 is very much possible.
Yeah, definitely it is, and we, as we were talking off the top there, I hope people understand that even if it is just 1, that is still an incredible.
It's still a big accomplishment for sure. I mean,
yeah.
Ever since he was drafted in 2015, I felt that was, I think a lot of Oilers fans felt that was where this was headed. That eventually he would lead the Oilers back to the promised land, and they would eventually win another championship. And 7 years later, we're as close to that being realized as we've seen in the McDavid era, and hopefully that comes true about 9 months from now.
I think the biggest thing that I would say is that if they don't win multiple cups, that does not mean that this is a failure at all. No. Not at all. And I think there's probably some people out there that may say that, and I couldn't disagree with that more. Like it is so difficult to do this. If they even make it to if they even play in the finals 2 or 3 times, that will be pretty incredible. It's just, there's 32 teams in this league. That means that just a law of averages, your team should only be making the Stanley Cup final. Only 2
once
teams
every
make the
30
Stanley
years.
Cup final every year. So that means you should only be getting there once every 16 years.
I guess so, yeah, depending on your conference. Yeah.
So you know what? Every time you win, there's some other team out there or other teams out there that their streak just went to 55 years or 60 years or whatever. So that's how difficult it is. Whatever the Leafs are at right now. What is it for the Leafs now?
It's 55 for the Leafs, and it's 52 for the Canucks.
52 for the Canucks. And think about the Islanders, who won 5 in a row and haven't gotten back to a Stanley Cup final.
No, they haven't.
39 years, 38 years.
Won 4 straight and made it to 5 straight finals. That's right.
Yeah, and their last one would have been 84, right?
84.
Their last
Their last
to the finals.
Final was 84, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that just tells you how difficult it is. For years, that's all they could do. That's all they knew how to do there, and they're still waiting to get back. So everyone, whatever this team does, make sure you appreciate it.
Absolutely. I mean, especially after the decade of darkness. When I was watching last year's playoff run and seeing them beat the Kings in the first round and seeing them beat the Flames in the second round and go even after they got swept by the Avs, I still thought, this is so much better than all those years in the late 2000s and early 2010s when the season was essentially over by American Thanksgiving and we were just playing out the run, and it would be January, and the most important thing that Oilers fans would be focusing on is who are the top prospects for the upcoming draft. When it's May and June and you're still watching your team play hockey as we were this year, it just, you think I can't believe it was so long since 2006, and we went through so many hard years. So I'm hoping that this trend will continue, and we'll have, hopefully at least a decade or close to it of long playoff runs and with a couple ending with a championship.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the having gone through what the decade of darkness should certainly help people understand and appreciate just how special it is to have this, because as successful as a run as you can have, it can go the other way for a long time too. So just enjoy it.
Without a doubt. And we're going to wrap up the show tonight with something new. I've wanted to try this for a while now, and I wanted to introduce an Oilers trivia segment with you. And I have a top 10 list here. So, Brian, I want you to try and accurately name everyone on this top 10 list.
Okay.
And here's how the trivia is going to work. You have 10 strikes. So you have to name 1 through 10 before you get 10 incorrect answers.
Okay.
So
this sounds fun.
You also get 3 lifelines, and your lifelines are let's say you can't figure out who number 8 is or number 5 is. You get the jersey number that they wore while they were with the Oilers. That will be one clue. Your other lifeline will be the country they were born in.
Okay.
or you can have the list of teams they played for throughout their NHL career. I'll give you all the list of teams that this individual player played with.
All right, that sounds fair.
Okay, so for instance, if you guess number 11, it's incorrect, or number 12, it's incorrect. You have to try and name 1 through 10. So if you're at 9 and 9, you've had 9 correct answers and 9 wrong answers. We're coming down to the final answer. It's either do or die, and we'll see how you do here. Okay.
Okay. Let's.
Are you
Let's go.
okay? So the trivia I have for you today is top 10 regular season Oilers points of the 1990s.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
So
wow.
From any regular season points from January 1st, 1990 through December 31st, 1999.
So you actually went and calculated all this.
I did.
Wow. That is impressive. First off, I got to give you a standing ovation for that. That is impressive. Wow.
Well, I can't take too much credit. NHL.com has a pretty good filtering device that helped me do this, but I have this in front of me, and
I promise I am not using this NHL.com filtering device for this.
We're going on the honor. We're going on the honor system here. So take it away. You have your lifelines if you need them. I want you to try and guess 1 through 10.
Okay. All right. Well, obviously, I'm going to start with number 1. So I've got to say it's Doug Weight.
You are correct. Coming in at number 1 with 444 points, Doug Weight.
Okay, good.
So that gets you to 1-0.
Oh no. Okay. Who else would have been? Would it be number 2? Would number 2 be Jason Arnott?
You're correct again. Coming in at number 2.
Wow, okay.
Now there's quite a significant drop off from Doug Weight at 444. Coming in at number 2 with 239 points, Jason Arnott.
So nobody else had more than 239. Well, now this is going to get hard.
No, obviously you don't have to guess 1 through 10 in order. I mean, you can just guess any names, and I'll tell you if they made the list or not. Yeah, okay. You don't have to predict the list in order.
I might as well. Well, I got the first 2. I might as well see if I can go 3 for 3, and then if I'm wrong, then I'll give up on that.
Yeah, it honestly doesn't matter what order it is, as long as you get all 10 of them.
Okay.
So 2-0 to start.
I'm gonna toss out. This is a random one. This is not someone I think is number 3, but is Boris Mironov in there?
Coming in at number 10 with 160 points, Boris Mironov.
Okay, all right.
2 points ahead of the guy who was in 11th.
Who was 11th?
I can't tell you because you might guess him.
But aren't I? Oh, I see. Okay, yes, because that would be process of elimination.
Yeah.
See, I wasn't even trying to cheat, and I almost cheated.
I got you. No, it's all good. So you're 3-0 now.
Okay.
And that might help you knowing that everyone on this list has at least 160 points now.
Yeah. I will say Joe Murphy.
That was who he finished ahead of, coming in at number 11 with 158 points. Joe Murphy.
That's my first strike.
So you're 3-1. Yeah.
Craig Simpson.
Coming in at number 4 with 195 points, Craig Simpson.
Okay.
You've got 1, 2, 4, and 10 off the board.
Craig McTavish.
Coming in at number 14 with 136 points, Craig McTavish. Wow. So that gets you to 4 and 2.
2 strikes. Okay.
Is it tougher than you thought it was going to be?
No, yeah, kind of. It's really interesting because this is like two really distinct eras.
Yeah.
Like there's like I'm trying to think who there was a holdover from the late 80s would have still got, and then who the kind of like were in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Might have put up. There's a lot of guys that I'm really borderline on. I don't how many? I'm at 2 strikes right now, right?
4 correct answers, 2 strikes.
4 correct answers, 2 strikes. Okay.
You have number 1, Doug Waite. Number 2, Jason Arnott. Number 4.
I think I got. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this one. Todd Marchand.
Coming in at number 6 with 182 points, Todd Marchand.
Okay.
That gets you to 5-2.
Ryan Smith?
Coming in at number 7 with 164 points, Ryan Smith.
Okay.
So now you are at 6-2. You still have all 3 lifelines. You don't have to use them, but they are there just in case. Unless you want to really test yourself and see if you can get all 10.
I want to test myself. This is a really good one.
6-2 so far, so off to a pretty strong start, I'd say.
Yeah, it's tricky though, but trying to okay. I know I'm no. Let's go. Yeah, let's go Tikkanen. Tikkanen?
Coming in at number 8 with 162 points, Esa Tikkanen.
Okay.
Now you're 7-2.
I got 3 more to get, and I'm missing someone really high, right? Like number 3?
The numbers you still need to get are 3, 5, and 9.
So I should be a couple obvious ones here.
Well, it might not be obvious. I mean, like I would think that Ryan Smith is an obvious one, but we'll see. We'll see what you can do with these last few.
Zdeno Seeger.
Coming in at number 12, Zdeno Seeger with 155 points. So that drops you to 7-3.
Okay.
That's pretty impressive that your incorrect answers have been number 11, number 12, and number 14. So you've been pretty close within range on all of those ones. Like there hasn't been one that's been wildly off the board yet.
I haven't been way crazily off with anyone. It's going to be someone like. I'm surprised. I'm missing whoever is at number 3. Like somebody's obviously way up there. It should be somebody pretty obvious that.
Do you want to attempt the lifelines, or is that too obvious? I don't care either way. I even respect it. I think even a little more if you can complete the list without them. But they're there if you need them.
I'm gonna try without. I'm gonna go. Okay. I know this is not. I'm sure he's not on there, but just to get this guy out of the way, to clear him off my mind, because I keep wondering, is Peter Klima?
Coming in at number 5 with 191 points, Peter Klima.
Wow. Okay, I would not have but I'm still missing number 3. Okay. I would not have thought Klima was that high. It
was 5, yeah. So you got him. So now you just need 3 and 9, and you are 8-3.
Can you tell me the 8 that I've named so far again?
Yes, you have Doug Waite 1, Jason Arnott 2, Craig Simpson 4, Peter Klima 5, Todd Marchand 6, Ryan Smith 7, Esa Tikkanen 8, and Boris Mironov 10.
Okay.
Still needing 3 and 9 to complete this. I think that number 3 is the one that's frustrating you the most, that you don't have one of the guys that's that high up.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of got me. Is it? Well, okay. This is another one that I'm just going to throw out there just to get him off my mind,
Okay.
to clear my conscience. Messier.
Coming in at number 15 with 132 points, Mark Messier. I will say his points per game average is the best on this list, even well ahead of Doug Waits. But obviously, he only played 92 games with the Oilers in the 90s, so
yeah,
that played a big factor.
I didn't think he was on there, but I'm like, well, you can't go down. If you're going to leave Messier, if it ended up being Messier, the last one on the board that I didn't get, then that would be pretty brutal. So
you wanted to at least go for it there.
That's a strike I'll take. That's a swing and a miss that I'll take.
So you're 8-4.
Shane Corson.
Shane Corson. It's not Shane Corson. He's number 13 with 137 points. So now I can say that all of your incorrect answers have been 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So
I'm missing number 3.
Your 5 incorrect answers are the 5 players just outside of the top 10.
Who is this guy? Okay, is it? No, it couldn't be.
So that gets you to 8-5. You still got half your strikes left.
Yeah, I'm still in good shape, kind of. Wouldn't be him. Could it? No, he never played there long enough. I was thinking, no, not Adam Graves. But definitely not be Adam Graves.
He really took off when he got to the Rangers.
Yeah. Okay, just based on how long he was there, Buchberger.
Coming in at number 3 with 220 points, Kelly Buchberger.
Of course, it's because he was there for so long. Like, you never think about him as that's another thing where, like, he's just like sneaky. That's why he should be in the Hall of Fame, right? It's because you just don't realize.
Well, I'll put it to you like this: he played 680 games with the Oilers in the 90s. The next most was Doug Waite with 462. So less than 200 more games than the guy in second.
So I'm down to 1.
You're 9-5. You have 5 shots left to get who number 9 is on this list.
You know what? Before I throw this one out there, let me think about Frederick Olsson?
It is not Frederick Olsson.
No?
I'm just looking where he is on this list because I think that's your first one that's really off the mark. He's number 46.
Oof. That is off the mark.
44 points.
Oh, no, I think, no.
So you're 9-6 now.
Huh. Glenn Anderson.
Glenn Anderson is also incorrect, coming in at number 21 with exactly 100 points. Okay. So you're down to 9-7. There's no shame in using the lifelines. That's what they're there for, Brian.
Yeah, no, I'll use, when I get to 9, I'll use the lifelines.
Okay. You give yourself one shot at it. You could use all 3 lifelines on this one guy and finish it basically right now.
I could, but where would the fun be in that?
I guess why not roll the dice?
I'm really starting to draw a blank, though. I don't know who this could be. It's not it's not Bill Guerin, because that's not a guess, by the way. I'm talking myself out of Bill Guerin. It's definitely not Bill Guerin. Well, okay, I said him. Let's just clear this out of there. Is it Bill Guerin?
Coming in at number 17 with 108 points, Bill Guerin.
Did not think it was Bill Guerin.
Not there long enough.
No.
Okay, so you're 9-7 now.
Okay.
Actually, I believe you're 9-8. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm 9-8. Well,
are there a couple names that are on your mind that you want to just throw out? You don't have to lock one in.
Well, I'm gonna toss out. I said Kirilenko, right?
You have not.
Okay, Andrei Kirilenko.
Coming in at number 16 with 109 points. So you're pretty close with all of them. You've had everyone from 11 through 17. So now you're down to 9-9. Do you want to use it now?
Yeah, I'll use my lifeline. So
I mean, you can use all of them really. So do you want to start? I mean, do you want to start with country of origin, number, teams you played with?
Let's do teams. Yeah.
Okay. Just gonna pull up.
I am completely baffled on who this could be. This is a good one because I am stumped.
I mean, you were really rolling there for a second. I think you were 8-3 at one point. Okay.
I've been taking like just desperation shots here for the last few ones because I am totally stumped.
So Chicago Blackhawks in 1991-92, and then
it's not Dave Manson, is it?
No, just wait. Then Edmonton Oilers 1993 until 1999. Chicago Blackhawks again
Dean
from
McCammond?
Correct.
No.
Coming in at number 9 with 161 points, Dean McCammond. So you finished 10-9.
Oh man, Dean McCammond. Wow.
So just to run through the top 10 again. Number 10, Mironov. Number 9, McCammond. 8, Tikkanen. 7, Smith. 6, Marchand. 5, Klima. 4, Simpson. 3, Buckberger. 2, Arnott. And 1, Waite. Now that we're finished with it, Brian, rate the difficulty of that list.
That was that was awesome. That was very difficult. But
okay.
that was awesome. That was great. That was all the things you could like try and stump me with. But it's something I should know. Mm-hmm. That's like the perfect combination. So, wow, okay. Dean McCammond.
I look forward to doing another one with these with you down the road and see if it was any harder or easier than this one. But I just felt like you and I are both big fans of 90s sports and pop culture, and I just thought it would be an appropriate list to kick off a trivia with.
I'll give you one last question then for me here. Of the 10 guys on this list, how many? Obviously, Smith is already there. There's a couple guys that already, but how many should ultimately end up in the Oilers Hall of Fame?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I would love for Doug Waite to have his night. Since he left the team in the summer of 2001, they haven't really had an opportunity to honor him. And just having him have the chance to come back, I wouldn't even be surprised if next season he gets in. Jason Arnott, no. Kelly Buckberger, yes. Craig Simpson, there's one.
That's a tough one, hey?
I mean, 2 Stanley Cups with the Oilers. He had a 50-goal season here in his first year in 1987-88. He led the 1990 playoffs in goals. He's the Oilers' franchise leader in shooting percentage in both the regular season and playoffs. He's a guy I think would get in. Peter Klima scored a very important goal in Oilers history, but the body of work just isn't there. Todd Marchand, played 9 seasons with the Oilers, but I don't think the resume is strong enough. Tikkanen, yes, absolutely. Esa Tikkanen will get in. He was the third man on the greatest line in NHL history alongside Wayne Gretzky and Yari Curry. Dean McCammon, no. Boris Mironov, he was a really good defenseman for them at one time, but probably not going to get in either. So I would say from this list, Simpson, a yes to Tikkanen as well, and Doug Waite. So 3 of the 10, including Ryan Smith, who's going in this year. Not including and Buckberger. So yeah, I guess if you include Smith, who's already in, and Buckberger potentially, so yeah, it could be 5 out of the 10.
Cool. Be interesting to see. Maybe next time, who are the? Actually, I would never get that. I was going to say between 2000 and 2009, but
don't go look it up. Maybe I'll bring that one back just in case.
The Oilers, so many different players passed through here in that time. I don't even know where to begin or end with that list.
One of the things that makes this trivia interesting, and you kind of mentioned it, was that it's basically 2 different eras. There's the hangovers from the dynasty in the early 90s. And then there's this new squad from the late 90s who, reinvigorated the franchise and got them back to the playoffs after missing it for 4 straight years. So, it's an interesting mix of guys, and to see where they all land on this list was interesting when I even pulled it up. But, you did a great job, especially early on. After that 8-3, you went on a string of incorrect answers, but you were hitting them all out of the gate.
Well, after that, I really had no idea, and I was just throwing ones out there at that point.
It was those 2 that you got hung up on, Buckberger and McCammon.
Yeah. Well, Buckberger, I should have guessed him earlier. It's just he never put up many points at all. But
maybe why you were there. When you're there the longest, you're bound to get there, right?
Yeah. So no, that was great. That was awesome, and I guess I just pulled it out. So I'll call myself a champion.
You did it. Well, Brian, I just want to say thank you for hanging around and talking everything from wrestling to basketball to hockey with me over the past nearly 2.5 hours. It's been almost a year and a half since we've done a podcast, which was way too long. I'm glad to have you back on. You were my first ever guest back in September 2019, and now you're the first guest that's been on the show 5 times. So thank you for everything that you've done and being a part of the show regularly. And we'll do another one a lot sooner this time.
Hey, that's awesome. And is it like Saturday Night Live where there's a 5 timers club and you get a jacket?
Exactly. I might have to borrow that from them and do that. And just quickly before we wrap up, you mentioned or we talked about that recently, that it was the 29th anniversary of when one of your heroes, Charles Barkley, hosted SNL.
Yes.
And Nirvana was the musical guest that night. I guess if we also want to do a wrestling term, you could have stolen the Booker T 5-time.
Yes,
WCW
exactly.
champion. But
exactly.
there's a reference that someone under the age of 25 might not get. But is that your favorite athlete episode of SNL ever?
Ooh, favorite athlete. Well, probably. I don't know. There's been a couple. Peyton Manning did a pretty good job.
See, you beat me to it, because I was going to say, Wayne Gretzky hosted in 1989, which is still the only hockey player that's ever hosted. And I think that speaks to how big he was following the trade from Edmonton to LA in the late 80s, that he was a big enough star that a hockey player got to host Saturday Night Live. And even though, he didn't get the best reviews for his performance as a comedic actor, it still just speaks to, how popular he was at that time. Especially, he was already massively famous in Canada, but, his stardom was definitely on the rise in the US at that time. And
I seem to remember, who was the musical guest on his episode?
Oh, I can't remember, but I know he did a skit of Wayne's World with Mike Myers and Dana Carvey.
Yes. And there's also what was it, the hockey in Hawaii or whatever?
The hockey. Man, I wish I could remember that. The hockey luau or something like that.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that, but I did actually see they showed many years ago. They showed his episode on SNL Vintage.
Okay.
I almost want to say its musical guest was Public Enemy, but that can't be right. But yeah,
Maybe.
no, the Peyton Manning. I mean, like Peyton Manning was actually like legitimately funny.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Peyton Manning's my favorite football player ever. But
really? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, cool.
And I will say that, and his episode in 2007, right after they won the Super Bowl, that I think is still the best athlete episode ever. And you know what? Eli Manning is actually pretty funny too. Both the Manning brothers are underrated for their comedic timing.
I think they're appreciated now that they've got like the Manning cast and they do the Monday Night Football watch along stuff. Like I've said a few times that like the Peyton Manning should be a late night talk show host.
He's that good.
Yeah, he is that good.
If he wasn't a supremely talented NFL quarterback who had a career in broadcasting waiting for him as soon as he retired, he could at least have some job in comedy writing or hosting, as you said. Do you remember, just while I got it on the top of my mind, the Super Bowl commercial that Eli Manning did with I think it was Odell Beckham Jr., where they recreated the Dirty Dancing scene?
I don't remember that.
Okay, no. Well, they're doing the dance to Dirty Dancing, like with Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey. And I think it's Odell Beckham Jr. runs at him, and Eli lifts him up, and the song from the movie "The Time of Your Life" is playing, and it's hilarious. I think that's why I said both the Manning brothers are willing to make fun of themselves, which I think makes them even more likable to a lot of fans who might not have even been fans of their teams.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, they've got they have so many people that are fans of them now that probably disliked them when they were players.
Probably.
So yeah. So I just looked it up too. The musical guest from Gretzky's episode was Flying Young Cannibals, which is a fine 80s band.
Yeah. Oh, and they had a big hit in 1989. She Drives Me Crazy, I believe it's called. And
you got it.
There had to be no question that was the song they sang that night.
That's exactly the song they did that night. So there you go. So like that was that was so that episode is so 1989 it can't even.
Yeah, you can't top it. It's well, if we hadn't filled in our late 80s 90s pop culture references throughout the podcast, we definitely hit the quota there.
Yes, we're definitely keying on a specific demographic here.
That's awesome, man. All right. Well, thank you again so much for being on the podcast. I could talk hockey with you and 90s references anytime. So we'll do this again soon.
Yeah. All right. For sure. Always a blast, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right. So for Brian Swane, I'm Eric Friesen. This has been the 99 Forever podcast. We're out.